Oh, there we go. Okay, I think I have everybody. Mr. Kinney is stuck in traffic, so he's going to come on. He's actually vacationing. He's going to try to make the Zoom meeting tonight. Cody, are we all set to start?
You're all set.
All right, thank you, Cody. All right, I'd like to start the Coventry Planning Commission meeting Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. It is actually 6:31. Call to order. Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Reyes.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Mattson.
Here.
Secretary Lukowitz.
Here.
Vice Chair Kalunian.
Here.
Chairman Flynn is here. We have 8 of 9 as a quorum, and as I stated, Mr. Kinney might be attending, coming on a little late. Okay. If we could all stand for Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
Which
stands
one nation,
God,
indivisible,
visible with liberty,
justice
for all.
Okay, this is a Zoom meeting tonight because of the COVID laws from the state. Also, if you can't get on the Zoom through your computer, you can also use your cell phone, and Cody will certainly help you through it. Okay, first thing on the agenda is old business. It's a public informational meeting. Master plan, Hopkins Hollow Estates, continued from January 26th meeting. Owner, Camp Green Association, CO River Point AC Church, applicant John W. Studley III, proposed major subdivision, 7-lot cluster subdivision, AP 308, lot 28, zone RR5, and the address is 323 Hopkins Hollow Road. Anybody here representing the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, Thomas Cronin, Nolan Bernero Cronin Ferrara, 1070 Main Street, Coventry, Rhode Island, for the applicant.
Hey, Mr. Cronin, before you present your case, I just want to instruct the people that are listening how it's going to work. I'm going to let you do your presentation. I'm going to let the board answer questions from you before I open up public hearing. Is that okay with you, Mr. Cronin?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Proceed.
I'm joined tonight by Sam Swasta, the surveyor, and he'll also be providing testimony and answering questions to the board. As Mr. Chairman stated, 323 Hopkins Hollow Road, the former Green Camp property, is zoned R5. We've been before this board for pre-application, and we did a site walk on a warm and sunny day, Saturday, January 15, 2022. The application is for a conforming road front 7-lot cluster subdivision. It's a residential development of single-family homes in a residential area along Hopkins Hollow Road, just past the library. Right now, the current conditions are about 40 acres of land, 40.8 acres of land. It's forested. There's a small area that had previously been cleaned, has some lower growth to the southwest of the site. There are a few older buildings on the property that have not been maintained. They're in pretty bad condition, and the current owners of the property have no intention of improving them at the present time. The frontage for the lot is on Hopkins Hollow Road. That's the only street that the property touches. So the proposal is to build 7 single-family houses right along Hopkins Hollow Road on the northern and eastern section of the property. We want to do this using the residential cluster development provisions of the Coventry subdivision regulations. The lots resulting from the cluster subdivision range from 2.36 acres to one lot of 2.688 acres. So on average, about 2 1/3 acres. The lots conform to the subdivision and zoning regulations for an R5 zone in a cluster development. So in a cluster development, the R5 zone regs change a little bit to a minimum acreage of 20 acres, minimum lot size of 1 acre, minimum lot frontage of 150, front yard 25, and rear yard 35, etc. So that there are reduced dimensions in the cluster development, and this proposed street front cluster development conforms with those requirements. A residential cluster subdivision permits or allows homes to be concentrated on a portion of the land or property with reduced requirements for the dimensions. The area that's gained by this reduced concentration, or excuse me, increased concentration. Oh, Mr. Kenny has joined us, and I guess that should be noted. Probably
Yes,
by Mr. Chairman, not by me.
yeah, it's noted that Mr. Kenny has joined our meeting. And thank you, Mr. Kenny. I know you're vacationing. I appreciate you coming on tonight.
No problem.
So you didn't miss much of Mr. Cronin's introduction.
I'll try not to be insulted by that. The area gained by the concentration is set aside for open space in this plan. In this case, 24 acres of the 40 acres are set aside for open space. The open space is going to be on the eastern side of the property behind the proposed homes. About 59% of the area of the property is proposed for open space, where the cluster subdivision regulations require 40. The subdivision regs allow for recreational use, agricultural use, a bunch of different uses. But we're proposing just open space to leave it as is in its natural state for those 24 acres. So in addition to calculations with regard to the open space, there are calculations required for the number of houses that you can build in a residential cluster subdivision. It's commonly referred to as a yield or a yield plan. We've submitted a yield plan to the town. It shows that the 7 conforming full 5-acre lots could be built on the 40-acre property. The downside to that is it would require the construction of a public street of over 1,200 feet, 50-foot right-of-way, 24-foot paved surface, associated drainage, would greatly increase the intensity of the use associated with the same number of homes, same 7 home subdivision. So that subdivision, the yield plan conventional subdivision, would require a loop road, which would have 2 entrances on Hopkins Hollow Road. Sam's going to talk about the actual lots in the houses in a moment. But one of the things that the residential cluster subdivision talks about is encouraging efficient and convenient communities, increasing housing opportunities by in part increasing housing density, and allowing for open space and encouraging innovative design. I can't take credit for the design of this project. Sam will have to take those arrows, but it looks like it fits pretty well with the neighborhood. And that's my point that I'd like to draw to the board's attention. The nearest neighbors to these homes which we're proposing are across the street on Hopkins Hollow Road. And will be facing our proposed cluster subdivision. And what's interesting is that although this property is located in an R5 zone, the lots on that area of Hopkins Hollow Road are of similar size and use as to what we're proposing. If you looked at the tax assessor's map, starting at the northern edge of our property, across the street is 266 Hopkins Hollow Road, AP 308, lot 29. That's a single family house on 1.24 acres. The next piece of property is 280 Hopkins Hill Road. It's AP 308, lot 30. That's a single family home on 1.8 acres. Next house down is 300 Hopkins Hollow Road. That's AP 308, lot 31. And that's a single family home on 1.44 acres. Next down is a couple of vacant lots owned by the Green Company. 30832 is 2 acres, and there's a small entryway to a larger lot behind that. And then the last house abutting our property across the street on Hopkins Hollow Road is 410 Hopkins Hollow, AP 308, lot 34. That's a single family home on 2.1 acres. So the houses across the street somewhat parallel what we're proposing to build in this area. Certainly wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood in the sense of disturbing or being out of place from what is located in that area. Before I turn it over to Sam to talk about his design, I would like to note some things that we will need to do going forward. We will need Western Coventry Fire District approval. All of these lots are proposed with OWTS and private wells. We'll have to run that through the Department of Environmental Management. And each of the cluster subdivision homes is proposed with a private drive entering onto Hopkins Hollow Road. There's a road drainage system, for lack of a better word, along the road, and we'll have to work with the town and perhaps the state to get those entrances approved. We have requested several waivers under the subdivision regs with regard to this application. These are checklist items that we are proposing to postpone until preliminary plan review. They are checklist item 42, stormwater design, checklist item 59, class 1 survey, checklist items 74 and 75, a Rhode Island DEM wetlands approval or a statement from a biologist that there are no wetlands. Checklist item 82, Rhode Island Department of Environmental preliminary subdivision suitability. Checklist item 106, a landscape plan, and checklist 107, soil erosion and sediment control plan from the town, approval from the town engineer. I'm going to have Sam go over the design of the subdivision with you at this time. And then Sam and I will be available to answer any questions from the board as Mr. Chairman has suggested. So, Mr. Chairman, may I introduce Sam Swarsa and ask that he be welcomed as an expert before this board. Sam is a certified surveyor and has testified before this board on many occasions.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Sam, go ahead and introduce yourself, name and address of your company, and then proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Swarsa with Coventry Survey Company. We're at 46 South Main Street in Coventry. I was going to attempt to share my screen if I'm able to do that right now. I'll try to. All right, can everybody see this? It should be a plan.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so this is the site. As Tom said, AP 308 lot 28. It's in the Village of Green. It's just west of the Green Public Library. The area of the lot is almost 41 acres. And it sits on the top of a hill, the summit of a hill. The topography is fairly gentle. It's sloping to the northeast, but very gently. There's probably 10 feet of relief on the whole lot. The soils on this hill, it's Paxton and Woodbridge. These soils are more of a higher water table soil. We have water table ranges from 24 inches to 72 inches for the test holes. We did test holes on all the 7 lots. So lot layouts, I'm just going to scroll down. These are the 7 proposed lots. They're roughly 150 feet wide and about 680 feet long. They're all fairly similar. The 2.36 acres, well, one of them's 2.68. We have on every lot, pretty much the well is in the rear of the house, and we have the septic system on the roadside of the house. The houses are sitting roughly 150 to 250 feet from the road. And then so for drainage, proposed drainage from rooftop and driveway will be underground or swales next to the driveway. And that will contain all of the kind of net runoff from proposed structures on the subdivision. There is a drainage swale that runs all the way along our frontage that is in the town right away. And we'll have to propose culverts at each of these driveway openings if there aren't any existing ones there to get access for the driveways. There are a few existing culverts. If we can use those, we will, but we just don't know as of right now if they're going to be used or not. And then so we have open space proposed on the west side of the lot, 24 acres, and the access to the open space will be on the south side of the subdivision. It's going to be a 48-foot wide strip of land dedicated to get to the rear of the parcel. And that's pretty much the design right now. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Sam, along the street frontage of each of these lots, the residential cluster subdivision calls for a 50-foot setback. Would you explain to the board how that is incorporated into your design?
Yeah, so the 50-foot, it's from the roadway edge offset. So that's a 50-foot buffer. Inside that buffer, the only thing that will be disturbed is the at driveway access. So everything else will have to remain wooded as is, and that will somehow be incorporated into the restrictions on or the covenants of the subdivision. So hasn't been set in stone yet on how we're going to develop that language, but that'll most likely be done in the next preliminary phase.
Right, as Sam points out, although decisions have not yet been made with regard to the open space, we're operating under the assumption that the homeowners will form a homeowners association and have fractional interest in the area of the open space and be taxed individually on that rather than having the homeowners association pay the taxes, as this has developed into the way that's most efficient for the town, to have someone responsible for the taxation of that area. The other entities or the town itself might become interested in the open space, and that is allowed under the subdivision regs for it to be transferred to some charitable entity that'll maintain it as a open space. Although I guess the town's not a charitable entity, but a municipal or charitable entity. Sam, I see that you have scrolled up the yield plan. Why don't you just quickly go through that for the board's information?
Yep, yeah, so this is the yield plan. Proposed loop road has to be developed to town standards. It would be 50 feet wide access. We have 7 lots here, and they're all more than 5 acres. Some are 6. One's close to 7. But yeah, this roadway is, as Tom said, like probably over 1,200 feet long. And so that's pretty much that for the proposed yield plan. This is the GIS map for the houses that Tom was talking about across the street. So kind of this is the layout of the lots that are just east of us on the other side of Hopkins Hollow Road that Tom talked about. And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of our prepared presentation. We'll be happy to entertain questions from the board as you have suggested.
And Tom, I just want to clarify too, that the waivers, a lot of the waivers you're asking for, just because you're at master plan approval. So I don't want the people to think that you're getting away with getting things waived, that you just can't do it at this stage.
That's right. Well, we'd have to have at least an approved plan to go to, say, the DEM, DOT for many of these items. So rather than going to those state entities twice, we wait for feedback from the board and then proceed to make those applications. That's correct.
And also on the site walk, there was a lot of things brought up about the culvert in the front, and you will be applying for a PAP, which is a physical alteration permit from the state, since it's a state road. So they'll be involved in the structure of that, correct?
I think with regard to that drainage culvert that runs along the property, both the town and the state have interest in that area, and we'll probably have to coordinate effort between the two. It is roadway drainage that affects multiple properties. So it's definitely an area of interest. Well, as you point out on the sidewalk, a lot of interest on that topic. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, anybody else on the board have any questions for the applicant? Can you get rid of that screen, please? Thank you, Sam.
Chairman Flynn, I have a question for Tom and Sam.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just for clarification, if you went with the residential with the 7 lots along the roadway, the common area in the back, that is not buildable, correct?
That's right. It would have a permanent deed restriction recorded with each one of the 7 lots deeds, in addition to the deed for the open space. That's how the town gets the taxation on the fractional interest as well. Kind of ties it all together, both restricting future building on that site and allowing the town to get tax dollars for it.
Thank you for answering that, because I know that was a question that came up too at the site walk and from previous conversations. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Reyes.
Yes, I just want to bring up that couple that was there. You offered to wanted a shot at buying 1 or 2 lots. Did you talk to your people that are building it or give them the opportunity first?
Well, we're kind of in a situation where we don't have anything marketable, Mr. Hayes, but I did note that to the applicant and the surveyor. They'll all be for sale.
Yeah.
But we can't. We don't really have a firm understanding of what it looked like, even after leaving master plan.
right.
That would be more like around preliminary plan when we get that drainage approval from DEM. Then we'll know what those lots will look like, and that'll be the opportunity. But
All right, thank
yeah,
you.
I think it was Mr. Thornton
Yes.
next door. Yeah. Yes, I recall that.
Mr. Chair, Glenn Anderson.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Hey, thanks. So Tom, the open space, the cluster, this cluster development, back to this open space. It'll constitute, if the town purchased this, the homeowners, this is the only thing that would actually constitute a homeowners association.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. And so that means the homeowners, all 7 will have a stake in this open space, whether be, I don't know, in the form of taxes, I don't know what. Does that mean that that is their property? So only 7 families can venture on that property? Or is that open to the public at that point?
That is open for negotiation, Mr. Anderson. So, however, the property is deeded once subdivided, right? So, in a fairy tale land, right, it goes through just as we've designed it right now. Each one of the deeds of the 7 deeds, those would be individual lots with their own deed restrictions and access rights to those owners. The open space would be the 8th deed. And whatever we put in that deed is going to determine who can use that property. And that is part of the planning process. So if this board would like to see it one way or another, that's allowed, as long as the uses are allowed under the cluster subdivision regulations, which open space is the least innocuous of all of them, then it can be allowed for public use. It could be restricted to private use. That's part of what this board is going to guide us on.
Okay, well, me being part of that guiding factor, I suggest, the first where, you don't deed it. So the 7 people can come off and start chasing people off when someone's trying to pick dandelions. I don't know. I just think it was pretty sexy knowing that this is going to be open, open space. As I understand it, as most of the people in this meeting understand what open space would be. So that's just my suggestion. I'm just going forward.
Sure.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, when we first started devising these residential cluster subdivisions, Mr. Anderson, most of the open space land would go to the town. Over the years, the town has lost interest in owning these parcels. So we've kind of had to flex away from that a little bit and come up with some hybrid models. But yeah, so I mean, we would definitely consider that.
Yeah, and thanks for putting that out there, because I'm aware of that. Yeah, the town's gotten away from it, and what made this appealing in my eyes was, as opposed to the traditional 5-acre lots, was that you're getting rid of a lot of impervious, getting rid of the road, getting rid of all the drainage, and leaving that open space. And usually, open space just as it sounds, right? Open space, so no one can chase you out. Thanks, man.
Hey, Rick, I'm gonna go to you, and Sandy, you're next.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of comment on that too, because I've seen various scenarios, and I am familiar with some of the homeowners associations that operate. And well, first off, if these lots are 2.5 acres, and then each homeowner has, let's say, a 1/7 interest, that's about 3.4 acres. So basically, they're over the 5 acres of an ownership interest out there, for lack of a better understanding. The issue is, if it goes to the homeowners, if it's divided equally and it's attached to the deed, the town gets tax revenue. If the town is a party to it, it all or some of it can become tax exempt. And if you deed it to a nonprofit, it's also tax exempt. The other issue is, if the homeowners association owns it, and then they start allowing other people to enter the property, they're basically liable. Their homeowners association has to pay for insurance every year to make sure that if something happens on their property, they're not liable and police it. So those are all considerations. And I guess we'll probably be addressing this at preliminary. Is that correct?
Yeah, the actual document will be available for review by Mr. D'Agostino and the planning board at preliminary. That's a checklist item.
Thank you.
Sandy?
Yeah, Tom, so the open space area in the back, that's not going to remain forested,
It will be untouched.
be untouched.
So
Okay.
the part of it is forested, part of it, I don't know. The description I read was scrub. I'm from Providence. I don't know what that means, but
Thank you.
It's what happens when you don't shave in the morning, scrub.
yeah, right.
Mr. Smith, do you have something?
Yes, I do. And Mr. Marchand could probably comment on this, my next statement when I'm done with it. But my experience from the town, similar to what Mr. Cronin had stated, is when you have a piece of property like that open space property that ends up being the town's responsibility, a few years down the road, the town ends up with complaints about a tree falling from town property into my yard, or a tree from town property falling on my picnic table. And then the town really doesn't have access to get into these areas to maintain it. So I think, in my opinion, it should be divided up between the 7 homeowners, as Mr. Kalunian said, then that would add to their total acreage of their lots, to make it closer to, to what it would be if it was done with the circular road, which I'm not in favor of. I'd rather see less of an environmental impact and keep them closer to the road, similar to what they are in the neighborhood. Allow the nature to be nature, but I think it should belong to those 7 people, because in the past it's been troublesome, these crazy little lots that end up in the middle of nowhere, and everyone says, well, it's a town problem now, but the town has does not have the resources or manpower to maintain that type of property. It's just not worth it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I actually agree with that also, because I don't think the town is in the position, number one, to take on a burden, plus lose the tax revenue of, decreasing the size of the property. So I kind of agree with that. And that way the liability issue and all that will be resolved. But, that's for preliminary. I just want to make sure that the people understand that, this developer is not a developer that sells the plan, which that happens a lot. He builds an upscale home. It's not going to be a house that's a spec house that you see in a development. I don't think it's going to do anything for decrease the character of the area, because I know that was brought up at the site walk also. So, saying that, anybody else on the board have any questions for the applicant? All right, I don't see any. Go ahead, Sandy.
If the town does have to maintain that, say a tree falls down, could there be made some kind of an access road to that area for the town?
Well, the subdivision regs,
Get back there?
the cluster subdivision regs suggest or favor no improvement. So no parking, no road. So I guess that would have to be worked out. But if the
It's
town
just a
owned it,
suggestion.
that wouldn't really be the applicant's call anymore. If the town wanted the
Okay.
property, they would make their own rules, I guess.
And it would create disruption, more forestry removed, to put that access road in. And I think, hearing from the neighbors, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they really want to keep the integrity of
Yeah.
that area. So the less disruption, I think, by doing these frontage lots, would kind of get where they want to be. You know, the forest is not going to be disturbed. I did an aerial of that area, and you know, I noticed a lot of lots, as you said, Mr. Cronin, are under the 5 acres. And I see where a lot of the land was cleared. And I would rather see the trees stay intact. And I think that's what the comp plan asks us to do.
I'm just thinking ahead, like Chuck mentioned, you know, if something should happen in the future, that's all.
Right, no, it was a good question, but if it's with the homeowners, then it would be their problem, shared.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, I just have one quick comment on what Sandy just asked.
Go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, on the cluster plan, on the very end lot, you did have an access so you could get to the open area. Is that not correct, Tom and Sam?
That's correct. That is
Yes.
correct.
So there is an access to get back to the open area. It won't necessarily be a paved road, but there is access, whether it's for the
Okay.
homeowners or if it is deemed open space, so.
Well,
Okay.
Mr. Cronin, you don't plan on doing anything with that. That's more of a buffer and legal access, but not physical access. Is that correct?
There's no improvement at all planned for that 48 feet.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I know the neighbors, it really doesn't, and I agree with them. I want to have as minimal disruption as possible, if in fact this plan passes. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Okay, I will make a motion to open up public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open public hearing, Mr. Flynn.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Mr. Kinney. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Aye.
Mr. Kinney,
aye.
Mr. Mattson,
Aye.
Ms. Lugowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Clunian,
Aye.
and Chairman Flynn says aye. Okay, public hearing is now open. I think what I want to do, Tom, is since we're on a Zoom, each person that talks, I want you to try to answer their question. And then we can move forward. And I'll try to keep the redundancy down. I mean, I know people want to talk a lot, and that's fine. We want the transparency of the meeting, but it gets to the point where a lot of things are repeated. If you just want to come on and say, I agree with such and such, I think that would be helpful. So Cody, do you have anybody you want to bring on right now? Anybody from the public want to speak?
There's one hand raised. Oh, there's three now. I'll bring the first one in now.
Okay. Is it Mr. Miller?
It is.
Name and address for the record, please.
John Miller, 300 Hopkins Hollow Road, Coventry, Rhode Island.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so I just have one concern. I did look at the plans, and I did notice on several of those houses, I know you reported tonight they're single family, but I noticed some of them had potentially multiple septic systems, and I'm just wanted to reconfirm that they're not townhouses with multiple families. Number one.
You want to address that, Mr. Cronin? I believe they're all single family with well and septic.
That's correct. They're single family homes.
Yeah, I was just questioning because it looked like some of them had two septic systems.
Yeah, I'll try to answer. Probably what you're seeing are the test hole locations. So there's 2 test holes per septic system that's required.
Okay, and then the only other concern that I have is that swale that goes across the street. Literally, there's that culvert that you were talking about where you had your sidewalk. That water runs off onto my property. It goes across the street through that culvert. There's a pipe. It comes onto my property and is actually diverted underneath my driveway and spills out around to the back of my house, and goes into the back. It's about a 12-inch pipe. And my only concern is, what impact, and again, I know you probably can't answer any of this at this level without the study being done, but I just want the board to be aware that that runoff comes off through my property.
That's a very good point, Mr. Miller, but I'll let Sam take this, Tom, if that's all right.
Sure.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so I didn't know about the culvert going across the road, but now that you say that, we can definitely get that located in. But in terms of the amount of, if there's any increase, there should be no increased stormwater, entering the existing swale. So we'll have drainage accounted for all the driveway areas and the rooftop areas. So the only thing that will add is the culverts that will be, in the existing swale for driveway crossings, but that won't increase any kind of stormwater flow.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, again, my concern is just that it's addressed somewhere in the plan, that it's noted that there is runoff that goes through this property. And if that's going to have an impact through this development, I just would like to be aware of it. If it would impact either more or less water coming through my area, again, it's been there since I got the house. I moved in here in 2006, and we've had some storms where if you literally look at that GIS film, satellite picture, I've literally had the water in the circular part of that driveway fill to about 3 feet, and then it drains during some storms. So. And like I said, it's a 12-inch pipe and it comes out at the back of my house. And during those huge rainstorms, that water is running out of there, and it probably spews about 2 or 3 feet in the air coming out the back end behind my house.
So, Mr. Miller, I know when we went on the sidewalk, if this in fact is developed, I would imagine, I'm not an engineer, but that culvert would be working a lot more properly than it is now, because you might be getting some backup in the existing culvert along the street, and it's forcing the water under the street into your property.
I think it was designed to take the water off of the street and divert it through my property. The original design. Prior to this house being built, if you looked at the satellite images, there was a creek that went right through where they built this house. And what they did is they took that existing creek and diverted it around the building. But it's, it takes a brunt of the runoff from the road. And again, at this point in your process, I just want the board to be aware of that. And I'm just concerned about the impact that this development might have on that.
And we appreciate that. And like Mr. Cronin and Mr. Schwartz said, that a lot of that will be addressed at preliminary. Well, now that they are aware of the culvert, then they will be addressing that.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Cody. You have somebody else to bring on? Mr. Restigian?
Yep, can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can. Name and address for the record, please, Mr. Restigian.
Arthur Restigian, Rustigian, 401 Hopkins Hollow Road, Green. I'm a direct abutter to the project. Speaking in opposition, I don't think anything should go on that site. Certainly not development like that. I've been through the comp plan a multitude of times, and I lost count of the number of times that it says the western end should remain rural. There should not be any intensive development in the western end. The western end should not be suburbanized, and on it goes. And clearly putting 7 houses up at once is a definition of suburbanization. While there was a mention that there are some houses along the way across the street that are not RR5 lots, to be slightly lighthearted, Wikipedia says that the village of Green was nothing but a swamp till the 1850s. When the railroad came in, a few buildings went up. So it took 170 years to put up about 14 or 15 buildings from the old railroad to my house. And this would be a 500% increase in housing in one swipe. So the idea that this fits in the neighborhood is just, I don't feel it fits at all, regardless of the plan. And as far as open space goes, the town comp plan also calls for the acquisition of more open space. And while this plan does preserve some open space, you have 40 acres of open space, and knocking down half of it is really not a definition of preserving open space. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I have one too. I'm Donna Restigian.
Go ahead.
We're sharing a computer.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I'm Donna Restigian at 401 Hopkins Hollow Road in Green, Rhode Island. We're in a butter. I have a couple of questions first for the builders or the creators of the master plan. Not knowing too much about how a master plan starts, from start to finish to you get to this point, how long does it take? Like, you get this idea that you want to build something, and how long does it take to create a master plan?
Want to take that, Mr. Croner?
Well, I guess the answer would vary based on the plan.
Well, does it take like a few months, a year, 6 months? I mean, a time frame?
A few months. This idea has been presented to this board previously. So
Well,
this
I'm
is
just
not,
talking about Mr. Studley.
yeah.
I want to know
Well,
how long it took Mr. Studley from concept to this written master plan.
Well, less than a year. Yeah. I mean, it's a negotiation with the property owner to start about what they might be looking for in terms of return. And then it's an analysis of whether you can pay that money and break even, or maybe make a little profit, and how you might do that. So the first part is a real estate transaction. And then from there, you got to examine the zoning ordinance, subdivision regs about what might fit in the property in whatever zone it's in. Kind of sketch something out, walk around the land. And then you have an expensive surveyor like Mr. Swarsa go out, and he, identifies the actual boundaries of the property, the public access, where the utilities are. So most of the time, the biggest chunk of time is the surveyor and the surveyor's work as to what this property actually looks like in dimension, and how it can be subdivided in a way that makes sense and conforms with the responsibilities and regulations from the town, the Coventry Planning Board, Coventry Zoning Board, and the regulations. Yeah, so it's I'd say less than a year, but more than a couple months.
So
This
Mr.
particular
Studley
plan
is
is
in purchase
not
and
original.
sales right now?
Yes,
He's,
Yes.
and when did the purchase and sales get signed?
I don't have that information in front of me, unfortunately, Ms. Restigian. I don't know the answer.
Okay, all right. So I want to quote the realtor, Bill Bell. August 21st Land Trust meeting. He was there with the associate planner, John Studley, and I quote, "The land trust is the best fit for Camp Green." It was in the August meeting of the land trust, which Mr. Studley, the associate planner, sits in the meetings. And it was that at that time that the land trust just started to talk about renew the interest, because it had been put on hold because of COVID. So it was at that meeting that Mr. Studley was present at, and then commented that the land trust is the best fit for Camp Green. So that holds true to the comp plan, keeping the area rural. And, I was asking about the master plan and how long it takes, because there was no interest. I wanted to know how far back, when the purchase and sales was signed, was it in and around the time of the interest of the land trust again in August? So I in my mind, I'm suspicious, and I'm making these two connections here. So I just want to go on record that I think there may be a conflict of interest with Mr. Studley sitting on the land trust, and his relative starting this process here. So that's one thing. My biggest concern with 7 houses, and correct me if I'm wrong, are they going to be about like maybe 2,500 square feet each? Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly around that number.
Okay, so that's what, about 2 or 3 bedrooms each?
Yeah, I think there would be 4 bedrooms.
Okay.
4-bedroom houses.
So that's holds a lot of people. And I'm extremely concerned about my well. And I've talked to some of my neighbors, and they're concerned about the yields on their wells. I've enjoyed a pumping well for 17 years. And you're talking about 7 houses with, let's see, showers, baths, washers, dishwashers, toilet flushes. Somebody might even want to wash their car. I want to know, has there been an impact study done yet? And I have been talking with DEM and the Department of Health, and they have encouraged me to get a yield, a well yield done before any construction begins. And then also a yield done after your construction is completed. And that's going to be an expense to me. And it's going to be an expense to my neighbors, because if this is encouraged to me, I'm sharing this information with my neighbors, because nobody wants to have a dry well. The other thing that I was told by DEM and the Department of Health's groundwater division is that when construction begins on a large project like this, bedrock is disturbed. Soil seeps down into the rivers of water, and sediment can end up in our wells. I want to know if there's going to be an impact study, if you've done the impact study, or if you're going to be doing the impact study, because this is, a pretty serious issue here, and it's going to be costly if our wells run dry. And who's going to pay for that if our wells do run dry? So that's one other issue. The other issue is habitat loss. Doesn't matter if you're going to keep the 20 acres, all trees and everything. We have a flourishing abundance of wildlife, avian wildlife. I mean, right now, the owls are mating. They're going crazy out here. It is wonderful to listen to. You might even say it's a hoot. Just throw a little humor in there. Retention ponds. You were talking about, was it the culverts in the front? Is that what's supposed to be catching all the water runoff? Because regardless of what happens, you said it's the top of the hill. You're still cutting off topsoil. And gentlemen, I know that you remember the solar farm that was going to go over here. And I believe a good part of it was squashed because of the runoff to Lewis Farm Road and the mess that it was going to make. Some of you are maybe new, may not remember that, but I just want to know what's going to happen, because when it pours, it comes down to our property. I've got a little brook that runs right through us when there's runoff from rain, and that's just rain. It's not from taking the topsoil off to create 7 houses. Also, I've talked to DEM, and the gentleman with the red hair, I'm sorry, I wasn't here to learn your name, but you were talking about water levels. I was told that your soil test tested marginal, and that was in November of 2021, and marginal meaning that it just meets the minimum requirements for the state of Rhode Island. So I've been doing some of my research here. And then DEM also, yes, you had said that you're here because you want to find out from the board about what else is needed before you go to the state. And the DEM told me that they have to approve anything before the planning board approves anything. And then my last question is, are you building the houses, or are you selling the plots and having the person who buys the plot responsible for building? That's a question.
Okay, thank you. You want to address them, Mr. Cronin? I know you've been writing everything down.
I have. I don't have any comment on what happened between Mr. Bell and the Land Trust at all. Yeah, the DEM and the Department of Health have water quality and well installation regulations that we will be following. Obviously Sam has placed the wells up gradient from the septic systems to protect the wells from any contamination. That's just the most obvious and practical of the regulations that we'll follow, but of course we'll follow them. I don't have any comment on the habitat loss. The culvert on the street is for street drainage. That's got nothing to do with our lots. That's water that comes off Hopkins Hollow Road. We're not going to make Hopkins Hollow Road any less impervious. It'll maintain, that culvert will be the drainage for Hopkins Hollow Road now and into the future. Sam had mentioned maybe some ways to improve the efficacy of that culvert, but that is not going to change. That being said, that is not the drainage for this project. We will not be putting any water into that culvert. As Mr. Swarsa stated earlier, the project will maintain the drainage on site, not increasing the amount of water or the pace in which it leaves the site in any manner. So that is, as far as the soil testing, I mean, it meets the state regulations by Mr. Rastigian's own testimony. So we're following the state law, the DEM, the Department of Health, the town of Coventry. This is a conforming subdivision. We have set out the rules as we understand them, and we are conforming with those rules. We're following those rules. We're not asking for an exception to those rules. And lastly, the applicant will build the houses. I think that's it, Mr. Chairperson, but if I miss something, let me know.
No, I think you did a great job, Mr. Cronin, and I did state that this is one of the developers in town that they actually build the house. And they're gonna be, like Mr. Swoza said, they're gonna be, 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. But at master plan, we just can't answer a lot of the engineering questions. So this is really a conceptionary plan, master plan, until we get to the preliminary plan. Did that answer most of your questions, Mr. I see your name up. I don't know if that's Donna or Arthur.
Yeah, it's Donna. I still want to know if you're going to be doing any impact study, because I'm extremely concerned about our wells.
We'll do what's required by the Department of Environmental Management and the
And what is
Department of Health.
that?
Whatever they tell us. And they look at the design, the placement of the wells, the type of soils, as you mentioned, the placement of the septic systems, the homes, the driveways, the drainage for each lot. And then they tell us what we must do. And that's what we do.
Okay, so they told me that you guys need to build retention ponds. Is that going to be something that's in the plan?
Well, we haven't designed the drainage yet, as Chairperson Flynn has mentioned. I can't speculate on what might be required to, as I just mentioned earlier, to retain and maintain the flow of water onto and off this property. But it won't be increased. I just don't know what mechanism will be put in place.
All right, so one last question. And I suspect you'll tell me you don't know, but I'm going to throw it out there. So we plan to go ahead with the yield, our a private well yield test. And if this goes through, we're gonna do one after construction. And would Mr. Studley, would you, or would there be someone who, if our well is impacted, would you or step up and assist us if we have to re-drill?
You are absolutely right. I cannot answer that question right now. I don't know.
Would
That's
it be
my
taken
answer.
into
I don't
consideration
know.
as you move forward?
So if the plan is approved, Mr. Seegan, Mr. Studley would be the owner of the property. Any changes he makes to his property, which affect your property, are a civil action, right? They're liability on his part. How he reacts to that, I don't know, but you have rights. I'm not denying that you would have rights. I just can't really comment on how he would react to that, depending on what has happened. So I'm not in a position to speculate in a public forum.
Okay. And can we have a guarantee from the planning board that the Associate Planner Studley does not participate in any decisions on this?
Mr. D'Agostino, would you like to answer that? Because, right now, Mr. Studley is filling in for Mr. Crossman, but I'd rather have your interpretation of that question.
Yeah, so my understanding, just for everyone's edification, because I think some comments have been made here that I just don't think are accurate. Mr. Studley is not a member of the land trust. Mr. Studley is an employee of the town, and he serves in the capacity of associate planner. He's actually on this evening's meeting, just for everyone's edification, because our planning director, Mr. Russell Crossman, is not available to attend this evening. So he is here in representing the town staff, but he has nothing to do with this proposal, with preparing any of the staff recommendations relative to this proposal. And he is not a member of the land trust. I think that was mentioned earlier in some comments. And
Yes, Mr. D'Agostino, I did. And I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you. But if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Studley replaced Brian Wagner. And Brian Wagner always sat in on the land trust meetings. I know because I was on the land trust a few years ago. I've got all the minutes here, and on all of the minutes from 2021, November 16th, October, August, September, present was Associate Planner John Studley. And John Studley was actually the one that was accepting bids for this property. And I have paperwork to file with the state for a conflict of interest on ethics division. I want some kind of guarantee that Mr. Studley is not going to be involved in any part of this development going forward. It's a conflict of interest. It's his family member that is in purchase and sales and planning this build.
I understand what you're saying, Ms. Restigian, and I'm not here to debate what is contained in the meeting minutes. I am here to say that the testimony that Mr. Studley is a member of the land trust is inaccurate. He is not a member of the
He
land
sat
trust.
in on it. He's the associate planner and he sat in on the meetings.
And the associate planner does staff the land trust meetings. I wasn't at those meetings. I don't have in front of me the information that you have.
They're right
And-
out on the open meetings website. The minutes get posted.
I totally understand that.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to react to what the chairman asked me to address and what you had said earlier. And I'm just trying to clarify. I think we both agree Mr. Studley is not on the land trust. He's a staff consultant to the land trust in his position as associate planner. I don't really want to comment on anything beyond that because I don't have the information that you have. And I'm not debating the issue. I think the information that you have speaks for itself, but I wanted to address the chairman's comments relative to the comments you had made earlier.
Thank you, Mr. D'Agostini.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Go
just
ahead,
one,
Mr. Colonian.
just one more point of clarification. And Mr. Studley is not a member of the planning commission and does not get a vote on the subdivision either.
So what role is he playing in place of Mr. Crossman?
He is the associate planner of the staff of our planning and zoning department. Mr. Crossman happens to not be available for tonight, so he is actually second in line, but he does not have any anything to do really with this project. The planning board, and you know, to me, I feel like our integrity is being questioned, and I don't.
Flynn, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Studley.
No, this is Town Manager Ben Marchand.
Go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry, I didn't see you on the screen.
That's okay. That's why I wanted to call attention to this. As the town manager, I want to clarify that I am here in Mr. Crossman's place as the higher authority in the chain of command. And Mr. Studley is serving in the staff capacity of providing the research and the preparation of the materials. And as a staff member of the town, he's doing his job and he does not represent the interests of outside parties. And he is supervised by Mr. Crossman and myself. So we are here to ensure the fair, objective, and professional administration of town functions and support the Planning Commission and the Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for addressing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Cody, anybody else need to speak on this project? Cody, do you see anybody else? Unfortunately, my screen does not show me if there's any hands up.
You have 5 hands up. I'm bringing in Mr. Berger now.
Okay. Mr. Berger? You're on mute, I believe. Can you unmute?
Okay, there we go.
Go ahead. Name and address for the record, please.
Donald Berger and Stacy Harrington of 410 Hopkins Hollow Road. Hi, Ron.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
Go ahead. Who wants to speak first?
We're speaking together in opposition of the whole plan. I sincerely believe that it will, to put up 7 houses all at once along that stretch of Hopkins Hollow Road will ruin the rural atmosphere of green.
Yeah.
We happen to live on one of the houses that's on a 2-acre lot. This house was built in
50
the
roughly.
early 1800s. It's on a 2-acre parcel, and it's been grandfathered in, as I'm sure the other 2 houses that were just recently built have been grandfathered in. I'm not sure when the zoning was changed to the 5-acre zoning, but it was changed to 5 acres per house for a reason, to keep the area rural. And I feel I have lived here most of my life. I can feel all the old souls that lived in green are rolling over in their graves to think that 7 houses would be built in a row on Hopkins Hollow Road. 7 driveways, 7 mailboxes, 7 garbage cans,
And
7 stops for the bus. It's just absolute, it just is unnatural to the setting to have something like that being put in up here.
well, we can't.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And if I can clarify something you said, in the yield plan, that the applicant does have the 5 acres per house lot. Because of the less disruption, they've put in a cluster development, which is okay in the zoning plan. And that is why you're seeing the reduced lots. But if you configure the open space, the lots do have the 5 acres.
It's just not 7.
I mean, the yield plan would be tremendous amount of disruption to put that loop road, for a lack of a better term. So that's why the applicant is proposing these 7 frontage lots.
I don't know. I guess we just don't want any of it.
No, we don't object to a couple of houses or 3 houses. That's just too much.
7 in a row.
Yeah, that's just, it would totally change the atmosphere of the neighborhood, the atmosphere of green, the wildlife.
The
There's
stars
deer,
at night.
there's deer crossings there. There's geese, foxes.
A bear. There's a black bear.
Yeah, we just don't want to see the wildlife imposed upon over there. We enjoy
I
it.
appreciate your comments. Is there anything else?
No.
No, I guess. We'll yield to the next person waiting.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. Okay, Cody.
Mr. Pimentel, you're on the call.
Oh, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I can't see you, but name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, it's Mike Pimentel, 266 Hopkins Hollow Road.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I guess my question is for the surveyor. One of them. As far as drainage is concerned, I think you can ask, what is the elevation from the road to where the proposed house site's going to be? Do you know the exact elevation? You must have figured that out already.
No, we haven't, we don't know the exact elevation, but it's probably only, like 2 or 3 feet. It's not that much elevation change.
Okay, okay, the reason why I asked, because it seems like it's more than that to me. I'm not an engineer or anything like that. But my concern is the runoff. Now, if that driveway is, say it's 150 feet long, and how many feet wide? Do you know the proposed driveway width?
Be around like anywhere from 12 to 16 feet.
Okay, 12 to 16 feet. So that is tar that's gonna let water roll down it, correct?
Well, it'll be pitched to fall into a certain, either a swale or some type of underground structure. So it won't be just like free flow running along the driveway. It will be pitched into like a certain point for drainage access.
But there could be potential runoff. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, the way that we'll design it is that there'll be no increase in runoff. That's the rules that we have to follow with the state.
Okay, well, yeah, just my concern is that if we did get excessive runoff from them 7 driveways, that's going to be considerable. And if it does happen to go into the road past that drainage ditch that the state has, which is hardly a drainage ditch, it's a mess is what it is. That's going to go down the road and dump into the property behind my house and to the Green Library and down further. That's just my concern. I think it's, to me, it looks like that's what's going to happen. But like I said, I guess we'd have to see. As far as there was a couple things said about the land that's existing here, the houses that it would fit in, because these pieces of land are, 2 acres, acre and a quarter, acre and 3/4. Just to let you guys know that these houses were built a little while ago, but they were not one large piece of property that was subdivided. It was land that was owned by 2 pieces were owned by our family here, and the house next to us was built in the 1800s, so on and so forth. So I just want to put that out there that the land that's here has been here. And in regards to, was a comment that trees were cleared on these properties. They were not, in fact, cleared at all. I know my property was not, and the property owned by Mr. Miller, 300 Hopkins Hollow, they did not clear that property either. That field was existing there. They just built a house on that. And as far as like, we're talking about that open space in the back, and they said that there would not be any access to the back of that. Not even a fire road if anything happened back there or anything.
Well, there is an access road to the side.
So there is physically going to be a road in there, or
I believe there's an access. Mr. Cronin, would you like to address that?
There's an area 48 foot wide, runs to the depth of the lot, available for access. It will not be improved.
So it won't be cleared?
That's right.
So as far as access to that back, in case there was a fire or something like that, they would not be able to get back there, correct?
Same way they can now. That's exactly what is suggested by the residential cluster subdivision regulations of the town of Coventry, that the property be left the way it is.
So the way the property, I'm sorry, the way the property is correct, the way the property is right now, there is access to that back lot right now.
You're muted, Mr. Cronin.
I guess the access is on foot, right?
No, you could literally almost drive back there. I mean, it's overgrown, but you can get a vehicle in back there right now.
It'll be that 48 foot strip of land next to Mr. Thornton's house and Mr. and Mrs. Restegian's house on the southern end of the property. That 48 foot strip of land will be maintained in its present state.
Okay. I for one can't say that I'm for it, but I do understand that things have to progress. But as far as the seven row association houses, I think it is a little much. And And I think it will detract from the quality of this area. Just throwing that out there so you know.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Cody, want to bring someone else?
Mr. Underwood, you're on the call.
Hey, good evening, Glenn Underwood, 818 Hopkins Hollow Road.
Go ahead,
Just
Mr. Underwood.
Yep, just a couple comments there. Mr. Cronin mentioned that the lot sizes were consistent with the other houses that were there, the 4 houses that were mentioned, but the road frontage is not consistent at all. The road frontage, the smallest road frontage of the existing houses, the 4 that were mentioned, is 250 feet. We are now looking to put 150-foot road frontage. So it's inconsistent. That's one of the first paragraphs in the cluster development ordinances there, that it's got to be consistent. Since we're deciding to build on the street with these, I'll call it West Warwick style short pieces of property there, it's completely inconsistent with the houses that are already existing. So that needs to be part of the planning board's deliberation there. Is the size of the lot acreage may be one thing, but the road frontage. Most cluster developments, and in fact, things like Victory Falls, Ravenwoods, all required a road to be built in with the proper drainage. And then it didn't interfere with the people that already have houses and properties in the area. So I think we need to really go back and look at the existing house lots and look at the road frontage of the existing house fronts, and maybe send back to the developer and say, why don't we make these things, consistent inside with road frontage? Secondarily, and that wouldn't change how much land is preserved or not preserved in any way. If we just change the road frontage, yes, you get a few less houses there. One of the things I saw on the plan is that one of the driveways looks like it's aimed right into the neighbor's house. And that's going to be really nice for the neighbor to have headlights coming right on top of his house. I would, respectfully, again, request the developer to take in consideration where they locate driveways and do some light studies and work to make sure that we're not interfering, because that's part of the cluster development plan, is to make sure that it's consistent and not interfering with the common good of the public. The runoff is certainly an issue, and that will be very interesting to see what kind of plan is drawn up. We know that, as already said by Mr. Miller, the water goes underneath there, and it'll be really interesting to see how you're going to contain the water on the property with 7 driveways and a water table of 2 feet below the surface. There's just no place for the water to absorb. It just runs down. And I think Mr. Smith, who knows that the corner of Hopkins Hollow Road by the Green Library there, you get a lot of ice on the road just because the water has no place to go. So that's a big challenge that obviously the state will be involved with for sure. But I'll be very interested to see that runoff plan. But that's my main comment, is that it's not consistent with the existing house lots, maybe in size but not the frontage.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Cody, do you anybody else want to get on? It's like Pamela.
It's Bob and Pam Thornton, 397 Hopkins Hollow Road, Green, Rhode Island.
Could you say that again, please? I didn't catch your first name.
Bob and Pam Thornton, 397 Hopkins Hollow Road, Green, Rhode Island.
Yes, I think you're at the site walk, right?
Correct. Our property was originally part of Camp Green at the 397 mark. That 48 feet that you people are talking about is right off the side of my property. There is no access to that. It is all trees. And then right 100 feet away, you have the green schoolhouse, which you show on that's going to be removed. So this already gone through as far as the purchase and sales agreement, though this land has already been sold. Is that correct?
Mr. Cronin, would you like to answer that? I can't answer that.
Sure, it's under a legal contract, a purchase and sales agreement. I don't believe that the closing has taken place.
When was the purchase and sales agreement signed?
I had previously noted, Mr. Thornton, that I don't have the answer to that question. I apologize, but I do not know.
When did this process start, like Mrs. Rustigan said, as far as this plan? Because somebody's got to know when it started. My contention is this, as Mr. Underwood said, and I did not know that about the original frontage on these properties, that you should very well maintain that property. Each one of these properties, drop a few of these houses to maintain the integrity of the Village of Green. If you have a comprehensive plan and you're going against that plan by substituting a variance, I would say that all the neighbors in this area of Hopkins Hollow are opposed to this. Mr. Pimento, Mr. Miller's situation's been there for the past 25 years since I've been here because that culvert has never been cleaned. I've called the state and I've called the town of Coventry. Each one passes the buck. Mr. Pimento's situation is because the simple fact right in front of his driveway is that culvert pipe that does divert. When I first moved in here, that was always a problem. I was going down to that very pipe prior to him moving in that house and cleaning that pipe out for the simple fact that it was backing up, okay? And then you've got the consideration of this open land space that you people are talking about. That 48, if you don't put a no trespassing sign on that 48 feet, guess what? You're gonna have people parking right there, walking right down my property and going into God only knows what they're gonna do in the back if you leave it as open with no regulations to it. My suggestion would be this, and this is my original plan. You don't develop this property, you get in coordination with the state of Rhode Island, okay? You have the Greenway bike path that's gonna be coming right through Benefit Street to Railroad Avenue. It's not completed yet. You can't park in there. There's no parking spots like you could at the summit. My recommendation is this. You keep the old culvert, which I've already drawn up, half of that old culvert where that cafeteria is, you take half of that culvert pipe, destroy the cafeteria, and you move the septic system. You get the state in coordination to put a small parking lot in there of 8 cars, okay? You would decrease the whole environmental impact on that whole area. You could turn it into basically what Tillinghast Pond has done in the Tillinghast development down there when they granted that to us open spaces grant. You would not only have to maintain it, you could keep it, the whole thing open, right where the tabernacle is located. And nobody, by the way, did a walkthrough. You people that get on this site and you go on a computer, you've not walked through it. You have a gem. As you walk in that first culvert, that driveway, if you follow that all the way down, it goes by the original tabernacle that was there. As you follow that down, I believe what Mr. Pimento said on the corner, that road that he's talking about does in fact go straight through. If you put a parking lot right there within the first 50 to 75 feet, blocked off for trail walking only, no motor vehicles at all, that path goes straight down, runs around that entire open field because the field is now open with respect to the outside because of the amount of perk pipes you put in there, okay? When the original backhoe went through, it goes around the whole back of that open spaces property. You can literally look down onto the stone wall barrier, 1,100 feet, walk yourself all the way through there. And if those roads, they're not really roads, but they are, if the town or the state open them up, you could literally walk around this entire property and loop back to that very same road that Mr. Pimento was talking about. That road on Hopkins Hollow, that culvert, as Mr. Pimento said about the ice, that's been going on for years. Nobody's handled that. Long before you do this development, I would seriously consider getting in conjunction with the state, not having this go through, open this up for a parking area for the Greenway bike path. You're 2/10 of a mile away. This would free up the entire Greenway bike path, Benefit Street and everything else. And you would also have more people coming into the town for using the Greenway bike path. You don't need to put 7 houses in. If you're going to put a development, you should reconsider exactly what Mr. Underwood said and go back to the original plan where the spacing goes back up to the 250 square feet and you don't have these people. I came from Providence, Rhode Island. I had a 40 by 80 lot. So you can't tell me that you're going to jam these houses 48 feet away from me and we're all going to see this. You need to reconsider the impact of green and the people that live out here. I pay $6,000 to have the trash picked up and the road plowed. However, the state plows the road as well. Who maintains the trees in front of the house? Nobody. Who maintains the road? Who maintains the culvert pipe? Nobody. So before you're gonna put 7 more houses in here, all these people's concerns about the culvert, that culvert hasn't been touched in 25 years. Everybody shirks responsibility from the town of Coventry with the trees that I asked to be cut down to a safety hazard, in addition to this culvert that has not been cleaned. And Mr. Pimento's situation is gonna continue. Because that pipe that you're talking about, that pipe is at least 50 years old. It's a clay pipe, okay? So unless you do a major excavation of that entire culvert pipe, and listen, like Mr. Pimento said, you need to wrap that corner. Now you're gonna get, where's the water gonna go? The Green Land Company, the Green Library owns 30 acres. You can't divert all of the water that's gonna come on there down across that road and dump it onto 30 acres of their property. Mr. Pimento's problem is, as the water comes around his corner where he lives, it disperses and runs right up his driveway approximately, I'd say less than 100 feet away, and then disperses into the land, the swamp land that's next to him, the 6 acres. I know all about these roads and stuff and exactly what's going on here. There's no need of this to be developed the way it is. You people need to get back to the original plan. And as far as the culvert plan, where you put them in the back with the 5 acres, you don't even have to worry about destroying green. You will destroy everybody's property here completely by doing that. That's not a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is a well thought out plan with respect to the people in the area. Jamming 7 houses along the road or completely devastating 40 acres to put this monstrosity. You know where this would really work with no trees taken down and no environmental impact? You have 2 perfectly good sites, Coventry Town Council, right on Route 3. There's one right next to Dollar Tree. There's land right there for sale. There's another series of acreage directly across the street where the cigar place is. And then there's another probably 40 or 50 acres on the corner there. That's where those developments would benefit people that need housing, particularly the type of development and you're trying to put in here. Subdivisions don't belong out here, particularly the way you're putting them in. There's no reason. That road's gonna be 50 feet wide, 1,200 feet, or 750 feet long in a culvert. Is the electrical gonna be inside in the pipes in the ground? Where's the water contention is major for the simple fact, you can tell me, I can tell you right now, you cannot control the water that goes down that hill with the way you're saying, with 7 houses right there. No way. And Mr. Pimento and all the people on the opposite side of Hopkins Hollow are gonna get flooded, because they already have been, with no houses there, with rough surface asphalt that's there with grass that diverts this flow of water. You're talking 7 driveways. One of the other reasons is, I don't know how you pass the perk pipe test on the property directly across from Mr. Pimento, because the perk pipe, where they put it, has been leaching water for 25 years. It leaches whether it's 2 below or 25 degrees below 0 or 90 degrees. There's constant water flow in there. So you're gonna build the houses up higher. They're gonna be projected on a higher foundation because your soil content's not right to build a house on. I've looked in every one of the perk pipes there. I've lived there for 25 years. I've walked the property more than anybody I can guarantee you that is listening to this meeting right now. And I don't say that to be a smart ass. Excuse me for swearing, a smart guy. I say that because this is what I came from. Providence at 40 by 80 to out here. I looked at 32 houses before we bought the one. And the reason we bought it had 3 acres and it was abutting Camp Green. This property was annexed off, I believe the early 80s, to the Lowgrens, because they were Christians. This was a Christian camp. They annexed it off so they could keep an eye on this property for 12 months out of the year. I didn't come out here to have 7 mailboxes. And just like every other person that's called up before here, you need to really take into consideration, if you're going to violate a comprehensive plan that you people have set up for 7 houses, for more, let me point out, for a tax base. You could get more taxes for this development by putting this development in an area where it should be zoned properly for. Right on Route 3. They're begging for someone to buy that land. They're begging for development. You're begging for affordable housing. You're going to take down every tree. Do me a favor and don't lie to me. I've taken down many trees in 66 years. You can't put a house in with DEM clearance or septic approval. You have variances. There's no variances around a septic system. You have clearances of land and houses that you have to abide by. You're going to take down every tree in this area. As Mrs. Rustigan said, every wildlife in the state of Rhode Island crosses through Green. They've tracked coyotes from Tiverton right through Green that make it through Connecticut. The bald eagle flies through. Everything flies out here. This is why we bought out here. This is why we pay these taxes out here. And I think the people on the board should really try just one day, individually or collectively, and I believe Sandy, this young lady Sandy and I were talking. Sandy asked me about the historical contents that may be in this Green schoolhouse. That schoolhouse, if you wanted to save something for Green and put up a little historical base, it's already got the 3 12 by timber steel beams underneath it to be moved if you wanted to save it for historical purposes and move it off of their property. You should really consider the rural aspect of Green. We've already got a tight little association in the village. And now as you turn the corner past the Green Library, you're planning on sticking in 7 houses, irregardless if you put them in the front or the back. You don't need 7 houses on Hopkins Hollow Road. It's not meant for it. We have over 65 signs on our road. It's 1.8 of a mile long that the DEM is placed in here. And now you're gonna put 14, there's an average of 1 car per house or 2 cars. So it's either 7 cars or 14 cars. Most of the people that are gonna buy these houses are gonna turn the streetlights on. Green in Western Coventry is known by NASA as the Black Corridor, for the very reason that most of the people that live in the rural community don't turn their lights on outside and run them all night because the peace and quiet, so they could see the stars and they could hear the animals and stuff like that. Not for 7 houses built right here. No one's closer than me. I don't want to sound like a jackass, but no one's closer than me because 48 feet out my door, I'll be staring into a window of a house. That's what's going to happen because the way you got them, there's no way I'm not going to be staring into a house. And like Mr. Underwood said, stick with your original plan. As bad as it would be to have the X number of houses that you could fit in the original frontage, it's better than what you got going on now. I suggest that each member, if you get a chance someday and you're physically able and you have the time, to just take a walk through Camp Green, park on the road, walk straight up that road and go right to where the old baseball field would be and tell me you want that ripped apart. And if there's any significance, as that young lady Sandy said, I don't know what's in that building, the old Green schoolhouse. If that building could be saved, you're doing a disservice destroying that building because Mr. Underwood and other people in this area, I believe, went to that school when it was on my property before they moved it. That Green schoolhouse was on 397 Hopkins Hollow property. When you go by those stairs past my property, that's where that was located. It does have a historical significance. If the building's salvageable, the town may want to consider that. Put that down there right where the tabernacle was. You wouldn't even have to build a foundation. Redo it, get somebody to donate their time and save that open land. You'd have 2 ways. You'd have a greenway bike path, which would alleviate the problem as the greenway bike path comes through. And you'd also have a nice little nature walk. But they did it at Tillinghast. The state helped Tillinghast through a grant. There's federal grants out there to provide for this. And you don't have to have water on a property to do an open space. You could get help from the state as well, because the state would own the bike path. The state would own the parking lot. The state owns the road right up until they go past that culvert pipe, right? So that's what that goes. You got to consider the fact that you have to consider the fact that you'll have more of a positive impact on the people of Coventry in the state of Rhode Island by contributing open space with respect to this. It has a dual use. The state will benefit, and the town will benefit. You've got too many crowded sections of parking. The Summit, most people park at the Summit bike path area. They don't really belong there. My suggestion is this: you could continue this on with as this bike path progresses and secure this land for the future development of that bike path with state help, because it's a bike path that would also probably fall under federal help as well, because it's supposed to go from Rhode Island into Connecticut. Is that correct? The bike path. So if it does that, it's an interstate route, which the federal government may or may not help with the state. Mr. Langevin, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Cicilline, and Mr. Reed may be able to help you in answering some of these questions, because I don't use the computer, folks. But to be perfectly honest with you, I call everybody I can, but this should not go through. You need to reconsider. You have many of opportunities in Coventry to put these houses in that people could have. You would have to do no clearing of the land. Your environmental impact would be minimal. Your water would be right off the street. Your septic would be right off the street. There'd be no environmental impact. I think you should consider that. I'll oppose this like every other neighbor has. And I continue, I'm going to try to get our state representative involved. I'm not sure if it's Miss Sherry Roberts. I'm not sure who is in charge out here. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Thornton, thank you for your comments. Mr. Cody?
Ms. Ducharme, you're in the meeting.
Hi. This is
Name and address for the record, please.
Jenna Ducharme, 280 Hopkins Hollow Road. I certainly can't probably say this as well as all of my neighbors have. We're opposed to this as well. I'll try to keep this short. I think first on the comment that this contributes to, or, is similar to the character of the community right now. I guess I echo what everybody else says, and you can just take a simple look at the plans as they are, and clearly it's very different on the side of the road with current buildings versus the proposed plan. It's just, it's remarkably different. So I don't think this is similar in character at all, just as everybody else has said, but I just wanted to point that out. I guess I have similar concerns to what everybody else has mentioned before me. I'm not going to reiterate the same things, just a few additional comments that I had. So, at a minimum, this would be about 7 additional cars, probably more likely 14. I live directly across the street from this and have witnessed at least 4 bad accidents on that curve right before this development. One of which was fatal, all of which have rescues turning around in my driveway in the middle of the night. And I have a lot of concerns for the safety of 14 additional cars coming around that corner each and every day. I worry about my own car on that bad curve. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't think people have mentioned that yet, but it doesn't look like anything can be done about that because it's not part of this property, but it is a concern I have. Kind of along that same line, I know it was said there was a study that will be done on, fire and emergency response times and things like that. Having to use emergency services myself, unfortunately, in recent years, it does take a long time to get out here. So I would hope, I know that all has to pass, they're okay and everything, and I'm sure something will be done about that, but that's another concern that, you add 14, 21 more people out here, and it still takes a long time for emergency services to make their way out here, despite the great fire department that we have. And I think my last point is I didn't actually even notice until Mr. Underwood said it, that one of those driveways does point directly into my house. That would actually be my bedroom window. So yeah, that's another, that's not ideal. I think there's 2 driveways that would directly kind of point into my property. I'd appreciate kind of some reevaluation of that, as well as considering, I'm opposed to this like everybody else, but if it must be done, I guess a consideration of maybe a bigger buffer between the road and the front of these houses that remains wooded, set them back, decrease it by a few. I think as Mr. Thornton said, the thing that I don't want to do is look out my window every day into somebody else's kitchen window. I want to look at trees. I don't mind as much, I guess, if there's houses over there, it's probably inevitable, but yeah, I think I would, I guess, appreciate some more thought to this, because I think there's a lot of issues, as everybody else has mentioned. So that's it.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them. Cody, do you have somebody else in line? Looks like Sean.
Hello.
Yes, name and address for the record, please.
Sean Harrington, 418 Hopkins Hollow Road. Basically, what everyone has said in opposition to this is correct, I believe. And the concept of there being 4 houses on that stretch of road on the other side, I think it'd be fair to allow 4 houses in on your development, and that's basically it. Divide it up into 4 sections, and you got 4 true lots that will match green. Obviously, nothing is better. I like Mr. Thornton's idea about using the land in conjunction with the bike path. And basically, I'm definitely opposed to this, and it looks like every single neighbor on this road is also. So that said, I yield.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else, Cody? Mr. Estigian, you have another comment?
Yes, Arthur Estigian, 401 Hopkins Hollow Road. I want to be clear, I'm not questioning the integrity of the commission, so don't.
I didn't say you were, but I can't sit here and see people point it out. You know, that I don't think that that's right at all. So that's why I said that.
Understood. I want to follow up on several things and add a new element. Certainly agreeing with everyone about the rural nature. My family's been out here since 1950 for the purpose of getting away from the city, as Bob Thornton said. To take it one step further, that the schoolhouse is a historic site, but the whole area itself, if you scroll back through the back of the maps in the comp plan, there are several archaeological sites set out in and around Green. None around the campsite directly. There's an important one down on the Moosip River by Nicholas Farm Road. And I have found several arrowheads on my property. And so I'm also concerned that this might be an important archaeological site. And if an archaeological survey can be done, that would be great. And I talked to someone at the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Society, and they said if there's any federal money involved, then they have to do an archaeological survey before anything can begin. So to just add another reason why this should remain rural and undeveloped. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Cody?
There's no more hands raised.
Okay. I'll ask one more time. Okay, seeing none, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Motion by Mr. Kinney, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Reyes. Okay, I'll do a roll call on closing public hearing. Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Reyes.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Mr. Kinney.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson. Oh, sorry, I already said Mr. Anderson. Ms. Lukowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Clunian?
Aye.
And Chairman Flynn also says aye. Okay, at this time, public hearing is now closed. Anybody on the board have any more questions for the applicant?
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Mr. Reyes.
I've been listening to everybody, what they're saying. It's just a comment. Across the street is 6 lots. The average is about maybe 1.7. I figured out. If you drop down to 6 units across the street on this, you can bring it up to 6.8 a lot. Use the back. Split it up equally in the back, and it'll go to 6.8. They'll be way over what they need. And then the drainage is terrible over there. But when you have work, you're gonna go there and work it, they're gonna fix the drainage. The state's gonna fix that drainage over there, so they won't have a problem. It's gonna run off into the property, but it's gonna be underground, mostly. Sam can say more about that, but it'll run up into a contention pond or something. So it would help out a lot more with that. Very simple.
And like Sam stated too, Mr. Reyes, that, you know, they cannot increase runoff.
No.
And I believe that the situation will be improved as
Yes.
far as the drainage.
Definitely, and definitely improved.
Because if you can call that the drainage that's out there now, I don't call it drainage.
Nope.
And like Mr. Cronin said, that's street water, and the development is not going to affect that. So anybody else on the board have any comments?
I just have one comment. Somebody had mentioned about federal money. This is not a federal project. There is no federal money involved that I know of. It's a completely privately funded project. Is that correct, Mr. Cronin?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, if I could.
Go ahead, Mr. Cronin.
As we have historically dealt with this board, certainly the comments with regard to the driveways and where they terminate and where those headlights would be on the other houses will be addressed. I think that is a legitimate quality of life concern on these projects, and we'll divert the termination points of those driveways so that they're not pointing at anyone's house. I think that's good planning.
I appreciate that, Mr. Cronin.
Yeah.
On a master plan, though, a lot of things do change when we get to preliminary.
Yeah, but I'm just pointing out that I agree that that's something that we will address.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yes, as Mr. Thornton stated and Mr. Underwood have stated, that road is a RIDOT road. It is not a town road. So it's up to Rhode Island DOT to maintain the drainage system that's on that road. In the past, it does drool out on that sharp 90-degree corner, and it does form ice, and it can be very hazardous. But that's been going on for years and years, where it's the state's responsibility, which they've done a much better job in the past couple of years on the state roads, cleaning up some of those old drainage ditches and swales. But just want to say that that responsibility of that road it's a state of Rhode Island road, and it long has been a drainage problem. So maybe with this new proposed development, when it gets to the RIDOT portion of it, for them to take a look at it, this could be brought to the forefront for RIDOT to get their drainage issue squared away, because it's water from the road, not particularly from those lots being developed. And as Mr. Swarsa said, the design that he has to do, all of the runoff, and he explained it several times, from the driveways, from the roofs, or anything else, has to be contained on those lots. It can't be added to any of the flow that's there. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Split. I really appreciate your input on the town roadways. Well, that's not a town roadway, but I'm sure you've been out there. Anybody else on the board? Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Mr. Cronin, just a clarification. The minimum frontage, I think it's what are we showing? 150 feet per lot.
Yes.
That is what's required in our zoning regulations or subdivision regulations. You're not seeking a variance on a cluster development. I heard several of at least one or two of the neighbors say they wanted to have the regular street frontage and reduce the number of lots. Cluster development, 150 feet is legal conforming. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're not asking for any variances, including frontage.
Correct. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So there's no variances in the request. So it's either the 5-acre conventional, you're here for the cluster. The 5-acre conventional adds all that roadway for the town to maintain and plow and all the disruption, or we get this with frontage lots on a state road, which don't require any town services other than the rubbish removal, basically.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
I just wanted to make sure, because I know there's a lot of people lately that are sensitive to their taxes going up.
Yeah.
And I know this last storm, Public Works was a little strapped to get out and take care of the roads we already have. Let me see if I have anything else. Nope, that's all I have.
Anybody else?
Mr.
Anybody
Chair,
else? Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
thank you. So, Mr. Cronin, that open space, had me excited. It just seems like, I don't know, it's not really going to be open space. I hear what these residents are saying. I very much appreciate what they're saying. He does have a conventional yield plan. Did he completely abort that, or is that still in play? Because if I'm accurate in saying that the 5-acre lots, 8 of them, They'd be 5 acres. They'd be within the comprehensive plan. And the only relief he would need is a waiver for the road. We'd maintain the comp permit, 5 acres that they're asking. He'd probably be able to get the 200, I believe it's 225 feet for frontage out here under the normal 5 acres. And I didn't know if that 8-house conventional yield plan is in play. And my suggestion is maybe you look at it hard, or maybe you've done wonders, a lot of your developers, and I understand that this is capitalism. Somebody owns it. They should be able to do what they want with it. There's systems in place. There's ordinances in place to allow them to do that. But some of your developers have met us halfway to where if you're going to put 7 in the front, can you go down to 6 to get the 220-foot frontage, go all the way back and give them their acreage? I just think there's a balance here. I think it needs to be viewed. It needs to be reviewed. And I appreciate everything that you have already prepared. You've given us a yield plan. You've given us the 7 houses on the frontage. You said you didn't want to disrupt anything. I know a road in the plat will disrupt it, but keeping with the comp plan, maybe saving the frontage would go a long way with these people that have spoke tonight, because I think they do carry a voice, much like your owner of the property also. So that's just my suggestion, my question. I don't know if the 8 houses were off the table.
I think the yield plan, Mr. Anderson, just as a point of clarification, is still only 7 lots, not 8. And in regard to your comments on the comprehensive plan, both the conventional and the residential cluster are conforming plans in our zoning ordinance, in our comprehensive plan, in our subdivision regulations. They're just different styles of development. So it is our preference, our strong preference, to build a road front 7-lot cluster subdivision. But the yield plan is just 7 lots. I just want us to all have the same facts. And, in terms of the comprehensive plan, I think we've presented a cluster subdivision that conforms, that meets the standards as set out in the town documents.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin. Rick, you have something to add to that? Are you all set, Mr. Anderson? Are you all set, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I am. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Go ahead, Rick.
I don't want folks to get misconstrued with the open space. If there is a homeowners group of 7 landowners that own that, they control the access. The contention that the public will just wander willy-nilly onto their property, I mean, it can happen, but the 7 homeowners will be the ones that police it. I think it would be much more to the detriment of trespassing or illicit activities if it's owned by the town or another body that's not right there watching it. So I favor the homeowners. I just don't want people to think because it's labeled open space. Just like when we parked our cars on Astor Lane to go look at a site walk over the whole furnace, the homeowners were out there, in 10 minutes. What are you doing on my property? And that's exactly what's going to happen here. Without the permission of one or more of the homeowners that actually own one of those 7 lots, the public will not be invited into the open space. And if they choose to block it, gate it, put a fence up, that's their prerogative. They don't have to allow public access. So I just want to clarify that. Sometimes people assume the worst, but there are plenty of these developments. Red Oak Estates is a cluster. There's one over near me, Hornbeam. People pay into the homeowners association. They buy insurance. They have someone go through once in a while and maintain some of the landscaped areas, but the wooded areas stay wooded. And, if there's anything going on in those areas that shouldn't be, the homeowners association, or at least one of the abutting homeowners, takes action. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there were a few comments like all these things are going to occur on that property if it's open space, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, if somebody's advocating for public access, then that's a completely different animal. Then it has to go to the town or a third party like a charitable organization, and then they have to manage it. And Unfortunately, because sometimes they have limited resources, that's when you run into problems where people are just showing up, accessing the property themselves. The homeowners association doesn't have any authority. They would have to either call the town or that authority or that entity, I'm sorry, and ask them to do something about it. So that's why I favor the 1/7 ownership of the 24 acres. And it also provides, that ends up being an extension of the the homeowners lots. Collectively, they can't build on it or do much with it, but they pay tax on it. That's reflected in their deed and they get a tax bill. That's it.
Right, Rick, and I think too, to add what Mr. Anderson said about the yield plan, I mean, I still see that there would be so much disruption in that area versus the 7 street front lots and the open space that's being preserved. And I did hear a lot about land preservation. I just feel that the frontage lots, in my opinion, are less detrimental to the area, and they do conform, as Mr. Cronin stated. He's not asking for any relief, any variance, any waivers as far as against the comp of the zoning plan. So that's my take on it. Does anybody else have any comments? Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
I just need some help here. I just want to question you, maybe the board member can help me on this. So there's 7 units. Each unit is between 2.68 acres or 2.36. If a homeowners association is in place, they would get the back lots, right? And that would bring it up to around 5.7 per each lot.
Yes.
What's better? Splitting up the back so each home has 5.7, or just having a homeowners association? What's the difference, to help me out on that?
The difference is he doesn't have the road frontage requirement unless he actually builds the loop road. You can't get that many 5-acre lots and have the 200 and some odd feet of frontage on Hopkins Hollow. So now he might be down to 3 or 4 lots. And it's not economically feasible for him to do that at this point. He would then have to build the road, which then requires drainage to be maintained by the town, plowed by the town, garbage pickup through there, school buses, asphalt, all that. That's one of the benefits to the cluster, is it reduces the amount of road frontage and preserves open space. You weren't on the board when there was a solar farm past there. These neighbors came out in droves concerned about the wildlife. So given the 2 options, because if a homeowner owns the whole 5 acres, they can do whatever they want with the whole 5 acres. In this case, they can only do what they want with the initial 2.36 acres. The other 24 acres has to stay in its current state.
And the lots are still they're still around 5 acres because they're all.
No, they get a 2.36 acre lot together with a 1/7 interest in a 24 acre parcel that's shown on a plan. That's it.
And it can't be.
And that 24 acre lot will have deed restrictions on it that protect it from being altered to any degree or developed.
Thanks, Rick. The help.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Reyes. I really appreciate that. And thanks, Rick, for answering that.
Yeah, good points.
Anybody else? Anybody else on the board? Does the applicant have anything to say?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, I think we're at the point where I'll entertain a motion on master plan for Hopkins Hollow Estates. Anybody would like to make a motion?
Ron, I'd make a motion, but I don't have the paperwork in front of me to do it.
Right, yeah, you're away, I understand that. You don't have the director's report?
This is
Rick, I see your hand up. Are you ready?
I will. I got to get myself organized over here.
All right, take your time.
Mr. Flynn, there is a hand raised in the public if you wanted to indulge that.
I closed public hearing.
Understood.
Well, then, and I'd like to also preface, before I make a motion, again, for the public benefit, sometimes I have to bring this up. As this plan progresses forward and the applicant comes before us, assuming that this passes tonight, there will be another public hearing at the preliminary plan stage. And those plans will show the details, some of which will address the items that were raised tonight, such as drainage and soil suitability and things along that line. So just for people, this isn't the end of it. If you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, or you thought something else, or you're waiting for more information, you get another bite at the apple.
Yeah, preliminary plan will be another public hearing.
Okay, so that being said, I will make a motion to approve the master plan for Hopkins Hollow Estates, the proposed 7-lot major residential cluster subdivision owned by Green Camp Associates, with the applicant being John W. Studley III, for the property located at 323 Hopkins Hollow Road. It's Assessors Plat 308, Lot 28 in the RR5 zone. The lot is currently 40.8 acres. It's an abandoned campground, and the subdivision proposed is for 7 residential dwelling units in a cluster format, with lot sizes ranging from 2.36 acres to a lot that contains approximately 2.68 acres and includes approximately 24 acres of open space. The homes will be designed for single family use. Let's see. The cluster subdivision is a means to preserve open space and is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. The proposal does not appear to have any significant environmental impacts. The plan conforms with the town of Coventry zoning ordinance. Traffic impacts, although not addressed at a great length in this application, would only be comparatively small given the number of lots, and all of the lots will have access to a public street. The motion would be subject to the applicant obtaining the approvals necessary from the Western Coventry Fire District, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, the Rhode Island Department of Transportation for a physical alterations permit. And included in the motion is to allow the applicant the following waivers for checklist items 42, the stormwater provisions, checklist item 59, the certification by a registered land surveyor with regards to the interior and perimeter lot lines, checklist item 74, confirmation from RIDEM pertaining to the rules and regulations governing freshwater wetlands. Checklist item 75, which is in lieu of item 74 above, an affidavit signed by a qualified professional, a wetlands biologist or professional engineer, stating there are no freshwater wetlands present or they are not within 200 feet of the property being subdivided. Checklist item 82, the confirmation from DEM that the soils are adequate for the use of an individual on-site septic disposal system. Checklist item 106, a landscape plan. Checklist item 107, the approved soil erosion and sediment control plan. And I would like to incorporate the planning director's report into my motion.
Thank you, Rick. I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
I hear a second by Mr. Kinney. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Kinney,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Ray's,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Mattson,
Aye.
Ms. Lukowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Clunian,
I don't want to mucky up the waters, Mr. Chairman. You didn't ask for discussion, and I just want to get one clarification.
okay, I'm sorry. Anybody have any discussion before I continue roll call?
I just want to point out that all the waivers that Rick mentioned in his motion, those are just for this stage. The applicant will be required to meet those waivers as the project goes forward.
At preliminary plan.
Correct, because I don't want the public to think that we're letting them go by on stuff.
Exactly. And I think that was addressed before you got on, Mr. Kenny.
I would have brought up the discussion item quicker, but I was fumbling for my papers. I thought we had we have a one-liner from the town engineer. I just want to get clarification.
If you want to incorporate that engineer's report in your motion,
Well, I will, but let me first ask the question. Will each new lot have an infiltration system, rain garden, or infiltration basin to recharge stormwater runoff from rooftops and driveways? That's a question.
Yeah. Yes, every lot will have to have that.
Okay, so I would just like to amend my motion to include or incorporate the memorandum from Bruce Hageman, Town Engineering Consultant, dated January 18th, that requests the applicant, provide those items.
motion is amended. Second amended, Mr. Kenny?
Second.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go through the roll call again. Sorry about that. Mr. Kenny?
Aye.
Mr. Burke?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Ray's?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Mattson?
Aye.
Ms. Lukowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Clunian?
Aye.
Chairman Flynn says aye. Master plan is approved.
We thank the board. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, will you entertain a motion for a 5-minute break?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. 5 minutes. 5-minute break.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trust me. They only wanted the 5-acre plan because they knew it would raise the price and the developer might walk.
Rick, you're not on mute.
Thank
So Sandy, are we going to be neighbors? That was a pretty nice house you showed me.
I sent it to my son, because my son Jamie's an amateur golfer here in Rhode Island.
Well, I'm out here. When I was getting off the plane to come out here, all these people, golf bags. I guess the Phoenix Open's out here this weekend.
Where are you?
Arizona.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, my brother and sister live out here. My brother's birthday was yesterday, so I came out here. He didn't know. Surprise him.
Oh, that was nice.
Yep.
Where in Arizona?
Phoenix.
Must be hot there.
It's I think it was 81 today.
Yeah,
but
that's not bad for Arizona.
Yeah, it's kind of chilly. I thought I'd be warmer coming from New England, but it's still kind of chilly. So,
it's still chilly in Florida.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do we have on tap next, Ron?
We have the preliminary comprehensive permit for Willow Lakes, the Independence Living on New London Turnpike.
Yep, where the
Well,
old
that's what
gravel bank
tonight.
was.
Huh?
Yeah, we have approved master plan. We are preliminary plan is in front of us now.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking through it.
Yeah, it's tough when you're not, you're on a Zoom and you're not anywhere near your home because it's tough to make the finding of facts when you don't have all the paperwork in front of you.
Yeah, well, everything that got sent out, I was going through, and I had some of that stuff on my computer too, so I was going through it today.
Yeah, I think if we were gonna do these Zoom meetings, I'd have two screens set up, one to have the mapping and one to have the agenda, but I'm hoping we don't have to continue to do these.
Yeah, me too.
Hopefully this ends soon.
And I don't know if you guys realize this is still live on YouTube and being recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. We're not saying anything wrong. The governor is supposed to let everybody know when Zoom can end.
Yeah, but he keeps extending his executive powers and stuff like that, so he keeps moving the ball down the field. I mean, and it's for public safety too. But at some point, the public's going to have to conform to a newer way of living with this pandemic and stuff. So,
yeah, but a lot of states are lifting the masks for the children.
Yep. Hopefully, it doesn't backfire.
No, I hope not either.
Do we have everybody back? It's hard to see too on the Zoom if everybody's back.
I think so.
I think we have all our board members back.
Yes, we do.
Okay, is everybody on the board ready to continue? Everybody ready to continue? Okay.
Yeah.
Mike's not back yet.
I'm here.
Okay, Mike. All right, we're going to continue to a public hearing, preliminary plan, comp permit, Willow Lakes Independence Living, continue to be heard from the January 26, 2022 meeting. The applicant, Willow Lakes Properties, LLC, owner, New London Turnpike Realty, LLC. Proposed independent living, assisted living, and memory care facility consisting of 202 units with 25 affordable independent living units, AP 16 Lot 3, Zone R20, and that's on New London Turnpike. Is anybody here representing the applicant?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Patrick Doherty with offices in Narragansett, Rhode Island, on 887 Boston Neck Road. I'm here representing Willow Lakes LLC on behalf of the application for preliminary approval. Shall I proceed, Your Honor?
Yeah, go ahead, continue. I'm not in on.
You are,
That's
Mike.
all right, I
How's
appreciate
that? Force of habit. All right, so Mr. Chairman, as you noted earlier, this had received master plan approval and a recorded decision back September 4th, 2019. We have proceeded to file the application and check off the boxes. This evening, I have Kevin Alverson, a landscape architect, here to discuss his design and plans and answer any questions of the board. And also Ben Cato of Millstone Engineering, the project engineer, principal engineer on this project. By way of overview, a quick overview and a recap, this is a development that is a independent living, assisted living, and memory care facility that's all integrated to consist of a total of 202 units located in 3 separate wings of one 84,000 square foot building. The site is approximately 12.38 acres. It's located in the R20 district, and it's the site of the old gravel bank there on New London Turnpike. The site itself right now is just bare, scraped down to gravel. As you can see from the plans that have been submitted, it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful development that should serve to, serve the community and enhance the surrounding area as well. By virtue of its design and the quality of the materials that are contemplating to be used in the construction of the development. As you recall, also there was a Sherwood Village development and a Tiffany Village development that were formally approved. There were going to be 7 separate buildings of 168 units. There was going to be a 30% of the unit, or 51 were deemed to be affordable. When we came back here for master plan approval, it was a modification of the earlier master plan approval, and we proceeded to get the senior living facility concept vested in master plan stage. So a lot of work has been gone into engineering through Millstone. We've taken great steps to provide a tasteful design. We think it will enhance the neighborhood. Certainly it will. I mean, it's a gravel bank right now. Waivers were granted at the master plan level, and you did receive a report, but I believe some of the things have been clarified with the planner, and there isn't an updated one at this point. But Ben Cato is prepared to testify about the waivers that we are seeking. As you may recall, or maybe you don't, it's been quite a bit. Any fee waivers that we have requested were deferred to preliminary plan stage,
Yes.
and we'll be discussing that here again this evening. But in the interest of moving this thing along, I think perhaps we could get to the merits of the plan itself, the preliminary plan, through putting on Ben Cato.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, Ben, you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Ben.
Mr. Chair, Benjamin Cato, registered professional engineer with Millstone Engineering in Warwick, Rhode Island. May I share my screen?
Sure, go ahead, Ben.
So the site, as mentioned, is a former gravel pit. The site is a former gravel pit surrounded by undeveloped land and residential properties. It's in an R20 zone. There are wetlands located off-site to the north. There are some jurisdictional setbacks on the property, which we will respect with the design. Topography slopes generally to the east. As mentioned, it was a gravel pit, so there's some steep slopes along the perimeter of the property, but the flattish area in the center of the property slopes to the east to New London Turnpike. The proposal is for a 3-story building with a mix of independent living, assisted living, and memory care units. As mentioned, a total of 202 units, 25 of which, in the independent unit listing, there is 124 independent units. 25 of those independent units, 25% of those independent units are marked for affordable units. So that's 31 units of the 124. I just wanted to be clear on the numbering there. Then there's also assisted living units of 48, memory care units of 30, for a total of 202 units. Access is via New London Turnpike. The parking exceeds the code for the town. We're providing 10 ADA spaces. We're also providing dumpster locations protected. We're showing it here on the north end of the property, so it'll have a fence around it per your regulations. We're showing landscape screening along property lines, which Mr. Alverson will speak to later. And there is pedestrian access through the site via protected sidewalks. We're also proposing, as a condition of a master plan approval, off-site improvements, which would be to construct sidewalks from this site to Arnold Road. So it's going to connect, the sidewalks run from Tiffany Road at the northernmost frontage corner of our property, all the way down to the existing sidewalks at Arnold Road. The traffic impact analysis by Bryan Associates was prepared for Tiffany Village. That's the apartment complex that was previously approved here. A trip generation letter has been submitted to the town that analyzes the current use and shows a reduction of the previously approved development during peak hours of roughly 30% or 38 trips. So the previously approved condominium apartment complex would have more trips than this proposed use before you today. The biggest part of my engineering talk would probably be the stormwater engineering. So the stormwater design is shown on this plan here. You can see the proposed contours along the edges. We are proposing some retaining walls, and we'll talk about the waivers for the retaining wall heights later. But the natural existing characteristics of the site lead to these needs for retaining walls in these locations. Stormwater is going to be collected with a system of catch basins and pipes. It's going to be treated in sediment forebays and sand filters and detained in a detention and infiltration basin. It sort of does both. These are all in alignment with the Department of Environmental Management regulations. We're also proposing numerous underground infiltration areas. That's these shaded gray areas on your screen. These are injection points for rooftop runoff, underground chambers. This proposal, as shown, has been approved by DEM. We do have a RIPD's permit for this. This detention pond in the front, the Department of Public Works has asked for a 6-foot fence to be placed between the pond and the roadway frontage. So we've proposed that, which again will require a waiver because it exceeds the maximum height in your regulations. Utilities, difficult to see on this plan, but to summarize, the proposal will be serviced by public sewer, public water. There's also provisions for underground cable, electric, and telephone communications. We have submitted our project to Kent County Water for approval. There's one piece missing as far as Kent County is concerned, and it's a letter from the fire marshal. Because of the nature of this use, the town fire marshal defers all approvals to the state level. So the state fire marshal's office has jurisdiction over the fire approvals on this property. And we just received the letter that we need from the fire marshal. The state fire marshal received it today. So that's the last piece that Kent County needs. We do expect to have Kent County approval shortly and would respectfully request, should this board decide to grant approval today, it's contingent upon that Kent County request. Soil erosion is shown on a soil erosion and sediment control plan. Again, we do have a RIPD's permit in here in hand. We have numerous devices proposed to be utilized on the property, including temporary sediment basins, hay bales or silt socks, silt fence, inlet protection, both for the existing catch basins in New London Turnpike and for the proposed installed catch basins on site to try to minimize any sediment runoff during construction. And we're proposing to tie in, once all completed, the stormwater will tie into an existing structure located at the corner of Tiffany Road and New London Turnpike. The next piece of the presentation is, I think, Mr. Doherty, is going to be the landscaping. If we want to go to that, Mr. Chair, or do you want to, I'm available to answer questions now, or we can just keep going with the presentation?
Why don't you keep going with your presentation, and then we'll have the board ask you questions before I open up public hearing. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great to me. So that
Okay.
concludes my piece.
Okay, Mr. Doherty, can you take that screen down, Ben?
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I had a little technical difficulty getting my mute button undone.
Oh, no problem. So if you want any board members to ask Mr. Cato, since he's done his presentation, or do you want to continue with your presentation as a whole?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is put on Kevin Alverson at this point to go over the landscape design and show you some of the features about that, show the enhancements. So, Mr.
Yeah,
Alverson.
you put up that rendition of it too. It's a real nice rendition of the property.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you, everybody. My name is Kevin Alverson. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Alverson. I'm a registered landscape architect in the state of Rhode Island. The office is based in Wickford. And I was tasked with the landscape architectural component of the project. And if it would please the board, I'll share my screen with the landscape plan renderings.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, as Mr. Cato had mentioned previously, the landscape plan focused heavily on trying to maintain and supplement buffering at the perimeter of the project site where we're abutting any of the abutting residences, and also focused on buffering the site from the public roadway of New Linden Turnpike. In addition to that, we also looked through the town ordinances on perimeter landscaping at the parking areas, as well as percentage landscaping within the parking areas and shade coverage within the parking areas. So the plan that you see before you meets those requirements according to the town regulations, which is actually shown as well on sheet 2 of the landscape plan. We do have a detailed zoning matrix that outlines all of the pertinent sections to the code that we're looking to meet. But as I mentioned, it focuses generally on the buffering of the site from the perimeter. So you can see there's some dense evergreen plantings that have been placed along the perimeter of the site adjacent to on the London Turnpike, as well as the residences and the public way of Tiffany Road. And that's what's indicated by these trees here. We tried to focus the plantings, the species, on native plantings to the greatest extent practical, but where there are some tight areas that were required and requested by town staff to buffer the fencing that Mr. Cato had mentioned, which is there's a 6-foot fence that's proposed along the edge of the proposed stormwater basin that's abutting any potential pedestrian areas. It's a tighter area, so we looked at using some columnar evergreen trees. And although they're native to America, they're not necessarily native to Rhode Island, but they're considered what we call adaptive and naturalized plantings. So no invasive plants have been specified anywhere throughout the site. We did also incorporate some use of mix of deciduous trees, some flowering trees to provide some aesthetic benefits to the site, but at the same time meeting the town ordinance when it comes to street tree plantings. So what we did was we calculated the number of trees and provided at the minimum the requirement for the street tree plantings, but we're in excess of that, and that's outlined on sheet L2 in that zoning matrix that I just referred to. In addition, within the parking areas, you can see the indicated trees all the way around the perimeter, as well as in the center of those trees, wherever we could place them. We used the town's guidance when it came to percentage of landscaping and shade requirements. We are in excess or meeting or in excess of what those requirements are according to the code. But we did take a good amount of care and time to work with the lighting design as well. that's within the site. That plan is included in the engineering package that was submitted to the town. So in order to meet some lighting requirements, there are some lights that are centered in the planting areas and at the perimeter of the site. So we were careful in specifying trees that were more what we call columnar in shape, that would minimize any effects on that lighting and kind of work with the lighting design. So really tried to balance the shade tree requirements with those, and that again is outlined in the zoning matrix that's indicated on sheet L2. All the areas that you see in green or rendered in green, those are all to be pervious landscape areas. I think this plan does a good job in showing that we're trying to maximize the amount of green space in a site that has the scale of what this project would be. Again, with the landscape, the buffering, we did focus as well along the southern border of the site, where it's abutting some of the closest residences. We'll have an existing buffer that we're maintaining along the entire perimeter of the site, and then supplementing that with evergreen vegetation to create a dense buffer between the two uses. That's pretty much the landscape design in a nutshell, but I'm certainly available to answer any specific questions that may be that may come from the board, and I can stop sharing my screen if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like it, if, for sense of, cohesion in the presentation, if the board has any questions with regard to the landscaping, I ask you to pose them to the witness at this point. As you can see, the design is an enhancement, and it's also very respectful of the surrounding neighbors. Provides a heck of a nice buffer and a viewscape going forward for these people that have been staring at a gravel pit for all these years.
I'm actually looking at your rendition right now, and it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
It's certainly going to look better than a gravel pit. And it's well needed in the community. I mean, I my father-in-law suffered from dementia, and certainly wouldn't want to wish a family on to deal with that. So it's something that the community really needs, in my opinion. But does anybody in the board have any questions for Mr. Cato or anything on the landscaping part of it?
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
I'm a huge a buffer guy, so I love that. I like what you did. I enjoy that a lot. One of the questions I have, if you know roughly, what's the distance of the building itself off of New London Turnpike?
What's the setback on that? Do you have that, Mr. Cato?
The required setback is 40 feet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yeah, I'm not really interested in what was required. It's actually what physically will be the distance of the building from New London Turnpike. And it's kind of a twofold question. I'll get into the second part of it in a second.
Well, if you look at the scale that's on the landscape plan on page L1, it does, just so you can get a sense of perspective with the landscaping design as well incorporated into this view, it shows that 1 inch equals 40 feet, and it appears to be hundreds of feet off of New London Turnpike.
Right. Hundreds with an S plural of feet, you think?
Yeah, but based on my lawyer's eye, but Ben is gonna scale that out right now for you.
Okay.
But we're certainly not looking for any relief in terms of setback.
Oh, no, not at all. No,
Back a little bit.
I understand. And, obviously the more the better visually for people. I'm all in favor of that. But I'm thinking a little further down the road too. And I know you said you'd be working with the state fire marshal when it comes time. Have you thought about, are you proposing any yard hydrants on the property?
Yeah.
Like a hydrant in front of the building,
So-
one in back of the building?
I can, so it's between 360 feet at its closest point to New London Turnpike to the building.
Sure.
And then it widens out to like 450 feet. But we do have multiple fire hydrants proposed throughout the development, in front of the building, behind the building, along the sides of the building. We're cognizant of the fact that it's a large building. We'll also have sprinklers, so there'll be fire department hookups on the outside of the building as well.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
And just to note, we did receive an approval from the state fire marshal with regard to the adequacy of the flow. So I think we're going to be able to satisfy Kent County, no problem with regard to that as well, based on what we received just today as we were preparing for the meeting this evening.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Anybody else?
Yeah, question from Mr. Cato.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Mr. Cato, you're saying that the retention area in the front of the property that's down at the intersection of Tiffany and New London Turnpike, you're gonna have a retention area, and then then it would be connected to, I believe you said something like that, to the stormwater drain system on New London Turnpike. Is that correct?
That's correct. And our design reduces both the rate of runoff and the volume of runoff from current conditions. We're infiltrating a lot of the general storm flow in that basin prior to it leaving the site.
Okay. And
There's an
system-
existing structure there that we would be connecting to.
Correct. That existing structure that's at the corner of New London Turnpike and Tiffany Road, has that been sized for that flow? And do you know what size pipe that is that runs down New London Turnpike?
I do. The so the pond is located, the proposed basin is located at an existing depression. So the site generally flows to that area today. And believe it or not, there's actually there's an existing pipe connection from the site into that catch basin today. We're proposing to replace that connection. But it's a 12-inch pipe that's in the road.
Right.
And we're proposing to connect to it with a 12-inch pipe.
Okay. Has Bruce, I would think Bruce has taken a look at this.
Yes, we sent preliminary plans to the engineering department and have responded to engineering comments, which reminds me, I should mention, as part of your planning director's report, there's a
Yeah, you have an engineer's report also.
Right, there's reference to a memorandum from DPW and the engineer. We've addressed all of those comments in writing, and we do have the plans reflect those comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cato.
Thank you. And there was 12 comments total from the engineer, and you've addressed all of them.
That's correct.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sandy.
I just want to thank the people building this wonderful facility, and it's long overdue. So thank you.
I totally agree with that. As I stated, I know having a family member, it's certainly well needed.
And I'm also delighted with all the trees.
Yes.
It's gonna be beautiful.
They went over and above on the landscaping design. I mean, the courtyard is beautiful also.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Rick.
I don't know whether this is the appropriate time, but there's a lot of waivers that are being requested. I see some of the outstanding issues, and if I could just maybe get verification, still waiting for Kent County approval, but you expect it now that you have the letter. I just need to know if they have the letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing, approval from to connect to the public sewers. You said you have the state fire marshal approval, or are getting it, I'm not sure. RIPTs you have, wetlands, and then we're gonna deal with the special use permits and the zoning ordinance. Is that correct, or do you have something that I missed?
We do have the fire marshal approval in hand. That's the only thing that's left to do to get the approval from Kent County Water Authority.
Okay.
And we do have, I'm sorry. As far as the letter of eligibility is concerned, we did utilize Barbara Sokolov, and we have that already. That's already been submitted as well. There are a number, there's a couple of other waivers. Ben has a matrix that he prepared and submitted with respect to those. Some of them were incorporated in the master plan approval, but we do have a couple of outstanding issues that are, besides the fee waivers, we are looking at the constraints of the site in terms of the walls and the rock wall and the fencing.
I was going to get to that. Can I just get clarification? So you have the letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing?
Yes, yeah, that's in the files of the town. Yep.
Okay, and how about the connection to public sewer? You still have to go to sewer subcommittee, Coventry?
Ben, you want to address that?
We have the sewer subcommittee approval for a tie-in of a much larger facility that was approved by this board, that being the Tiffany Village. I'm not sure that the town requires a renewal of that, but the flows are much less than they were for the
I got it.
Approved apartments.
I'm just trying to make sure that I make note of anything that might be outstanding so that we can incorporate it in any motion to approve this down the line. So I don't want to leave anything out.
Sure.
So
to the extent that it may be required,
you think you're going to get it any day, but you still need that. You got the public sewer if required, and then the RIPD's permit you said you had. And how about wetlands?
Wetlands is incorporated in the RIPD's permit. It's the same.
Okay, so that's all good. And the other two we got to do. Okay. And then, okay, so if you want to go to the waivers, that was one of the ones I wanted to ask about, because I know there was the one in there about the walls, and I think we might have covered this at one of the prior approvals, but maybe you could just point out on your plan. I know the heights range, but I'm just trying to get a feel for some areas they might be 10 feet. If this is something we rehashed, maybe the other members of the board would like to know if they weren't on. But I think we talked that there's adequate clearances around the building for vehicles, and the walls are going to be constructed in a manner that you don't expect any adverse incidents to occur. I'm not quite sure what type of wall, or so maybe we could just touch on that. If they're 4-foot walls around most of the property, I think there were a few spots where maybe it was going to go a little higher. I think we talked about wheel blocks, and I think I was the one that brought it up. They're a pain in the neck for plowing, but my concern, I think at that time, was if you're going to use the curb for the sidewalk, you don't want vehicles backing up so far that the wheel hits the curb and now the sidewalk is not passable, or that, for snow removal issues. And I'm not sure, whether that was addressed. And I think the rest of the stuff were just deviations from regulations or the fee waivers, which we said we would cover separate. Oh, the other one was the monumentation. There's a waiver in here for monuments. Are you still pinned in the 4 corners? Is that what
yes.
we agreed to?
Yes. Yes. So that waiver, your ordinance calls for granite bounds at every corner, which is in excess of the standard surveying requirements. We have a class 1 survey, which has the 4 corners pinned, or with either iron rods or drill holes as appropriate for a class 1 survey. The waiver was for the bound piece, the granite bounds.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. So I don't know if you want to pull the plan up and just kind of go over where the wall variances are needed. That's kind of what I was looking for.
If I can jump in too, I think we did ask for engineered walls versus boulder, because I know the town ordinance does not allow any boulder wall over 4 feet. I think the board at the time was more comfortable with the engineered wall.
That's correct. So we're showing 2 extensive retaining walls, one on the north end of the property, if you can see my screen here, and one along the southern end of the property. So what we're proposing to do on the southern end is, where the slope is very steep right now, in order to get the clearance for vehicles, we're proposing a retaining wall there. The opposite, so that would be a cut wall. The opposite is true on the northern end of the site, where we're trying to protect the and respect the buffer to the wetland. So we're proposing a fill retaining wall on that side so that we're not doing any work within the wetland buffers and keeping everything, because this building is so large in its floor plan, and interior ramps of the building are undesirable. It makes it so that we have to have a relatively flat area over a large space. So that necessitates the retaining walls. The retaining walls are proposed to be engineered walls. We call them out as by others because we don't have them engineered at this time. It would be something akin to a Versalock wall.
That's fine.
Notes on the plans read, I can read it more clearly on my sheet. Retaining wall shall be designed and stamped by a professional engineer and approved by the town engineer. So that's right on the plan.
Okay.
So that hopefully alleviates concern from the town from that perspective. As far as wall heights, they range from 0. They go, and they can be extensive. They go up to 18 feet in places. But again, they have to be engineered walls. So that's something that typically the company that produces the material, manufactures the material of the wall, provides the design for the wall for the town to approve.
So my follow-up to that is let's go with the wall that's on the, I'll call it the south end of your plan. That's the one that's holding back the soil so to protect the parking area.
Correct.
What's the wall height range over there? From one end to the other?
That ranges from 0 feet at the bottom to, we'll call it a max height here of 23 feet at its highest.
And the 23 feet's where back at the parking area in the back of the property?
Right. Actually, I believe it's this piece right in here.
Okay. All right.
And
Now,
it may end up being tiered. The final design may be a tiered wall. It
Correct.
depends on the manufacturer.
now how about on the other side, the one that holds?
So again, that ranges that it's nothing at the ends, and that one is as high. That one's 18 feet at its highest point.
So there's basically an 18-foot cliff, so to speak, if I'm understanding what you're referring to. So is there any type of fencing or barrier proposed?
I believe we proposed a guardrail at the top of that wall.
I'm just asking the question, do you see the need to protect that from pedestrians?
Did I hear that right? Just a guardrail?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what's required there, we would look at the requirements of the wall manufacturer, how close the wall has to be to the curb in order to be constructed properly. But oftentimes the guardrail is integrated into the wall design. It's actually part of the wall.
And if the wall's stepped, there would be less of a drop, of course.
That's correct.
It may not be stepped on that side though, because it's to protect the wetlands. So I just want to my follow-up question was, I understand what the guardrail does. That protects from vehicular situations. Was there any thought giving to also adding any type of barrier to prevent a pedestrian incident? I realize we're in a parking area, but I'm also looking at the type of development that we're proposing over there.
Right. So exactly. Okay. So the sidewalk is on the opposite end of that drive aisle, the driveway, but perhaps out of an abundance of caution, we should propose a 4-foot fence along there.
I'm just throwing it out.
I would happen to agree with that, Rick. I would feel more comfortable with that because, the property adjacent to that, I would hate to see anybody walking over there and see an 18-foot drop.
Yeah, that's an acceptable condition to us. We don't argue with that at all.
No, I agree with that, Rick. I would like to see that on the plan also.
Okay, so, all right. So I think I kind of flushed out some of the items. I don't know if they want to comment on any of these other waivers or for the benefit of anyone else.
Does the board want to go into the public hearing before we discuss the waivers, or do you want to discuss those? Want to go into the public hearing?
Yes.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Doherty? Or do you want to continue? Are you done with your presentation?
Well, I think we could just add a couple of other points. As you
Yeah,
know,
go
this
ahead.
is,
I'm
this is
not
the-
rushing you by any means.
Oh, no, that's fine. And I don't mean to belabor any points, but I just wanted to point out for the benefit of the people that will be speaking at the public hearing too, that this is in the nature of a comprehensive permit that has an affordable housing component to it as well. So the standards are a little bit different. The waivers, as this board knows, you're a super body that has the ability to grant waivers that are in connection with this project, as granted by 4553-4 of Rhode Island General Laws. So the standards are, you've made findings on the master plan concept. The purpose, as you know, of preliminaries to flesh out the engineering and get the finer points done on stormwater drainage, landscaping, and so on. So with that being said, you know, obviously we were very sensitive to the nature of the type of resident that's going to be here, and we're all for safety and, you know, protecting any drop-offs from that. But we do feel that this is going to fill a nice need in the town. I think towns and cities all over the country are in great need of these types of facilities, and it'll be a nice place to, you know, have people close to home that will fulfill that need and let people transition toward an end of life. It not only has the independent, but the assisted, and then memory care. As you know, it's a horrible disease, but
yes,
people can transition into a place where they're comfortable with and they don't have to leave. It's a great concept, and we feel that this is something that merits a comprehensive permit being granted and the relief granted as well. But if you'd like, we can address the waivers, the fee waivers at a later date. You want to open the public hearing, that's fine.
Well, normally that's what we do.
Or not a later date, I meant later in this.
Well, but we do actually open up the public hearing because we discussed the waivers as a board. I'd like to hear from the public. So if that's okay with you, I'll.
You're the chairman. I'll defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll take a motion to open up public hearing.
A motion to open up public hearing.
I have a motion by Mr. Reyes. Do I have a second?
Second. I'll second it.
By Mr. Mattson. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Reyes.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Mr. Kinney.
Aye.
Mr. Mattson.
Aye.
Ms. Lukowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Clunian.
Aye.
Chairman Flynn also says aye. So public hearing is now open. So, Mr. Doherty, as people, seeing it is Zoom, as people ask questions, I'm going to address them one by one, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
All right. Thank you. Cody, we have anybody that wants to come in and speak for or against this project?
There are no hands raised currently.
Okay, I'll give it a minute. I did have one email that was in your packet from a Mr. Glenn Jennings that had some concerns. And I think a lot of that's been addressed tonight, but I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make a comment for or against this project? We seeing anything?
No hands raised.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to
Make a
close
motion,
public
we-
hearing.
Take the motion by Mr. Smith. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kinney. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Reyes,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Aye.
Mr. Kinney,
Aye.
Mr. Mattson,
Aye.
Ms. Lukowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Clunian.
Aye.
Chairman Flynn also says aye. So the public hearing is now closed. Okay, so if you want to proceed with maybe your waivers or
Yes, that'd be great. Ben, you've prepared a more or less a matrix of the waivers, but one thing in hearing these out and weighing and deliberating over them, I think it's important to note that this facility would probably bring in approximately 65 jobs that are, you know, decent paying jobs for not only nursing, healthcare workers, facility workers. There's just a wide range there are 3 shifts that will be required on site at all times. So I think this not only, when weighing the viability of the waivers in terms of the comprehensive permit, the benefits to not only the tax base by the 651,000 plus or minus dollars that are net to the town, plus the influx of 3 shifts of jobs around the clock, I think should be taken into consideration. Thank you.
And I believe you did state about the waivers that we're one-stop shopping. I think some of the waivers the town council has to waive. I don't believe the planning commission can waive a lot of the fees. I know Ben is sitting on. Is that true, Mr. Merchant or Mr. D'Agostino? As far as the waivers, do they have to go in front of the council for some of those waivers?
The council sits as the sewer authority, and the council also, by ordinance and statute, addresses any waivers regarding fair share development fees.
Okay, that's what I had thought. So anything to do with those fees would have to be done by the council.
I would note that it has been done in the prior applications before the board for Tiffany Village and Sherwood Village developments as well. So obviously your recommendations, and I believe you do have plenary power under the Comprehensive Affordable Housing Act. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Low and Moderate Income Housing Act. I apologize. So I do think that you do have that power, perhaps maybe not under the sewer authority with plenary, because obviously that's based upon capacity and whether or not the systems can handle this type of an influx. But I do believe that it's my position that you do have the power to waive these. So it may be helpful for purposes of this if you would consider them. And if we do have to end up going before the council, at least they'll have the benefit of the planning board's recommendations or take on it as well.
Okay, no problem. We'll consider everything, but I don't believe we do have the power, as Mr. D'Agostino said, and the fair share development fees. I don't believe we have that power. But no, we'll listen to all the waivers and we'll certainly have a discussion on them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I think I'm just going to read through the waivers as they're presented in your director's report, so everybody can kind of follow along.
Okay,
and really, all I want to do is just list the ordinance section for the record, and then a brief description if it's even needed, just to try to keep things simplified. So to start off, I'm on page 7 of 13 of the report that I have, and it starts with the section 603.a with respect to lot coverage, section 1460, section 1481. It's my understanding that this particular waiver was granted as part of the master plan decision, but I defer to the board on that.
Section I believe we did waive that on the lot coverage. You're correct on that.
Section 1208 is the wheel blocks waiver that was discussed by Mr. Clooney earlier, and I certainly understand his point of view, and I don't know if we need to modify the waiver to just be clear that where the sidewalk directly abuts a curb, we would have to provide the curb stops to protect pedestrians, but in other areas where there's a separation of landscape, perhaps that would not be required. I don't know what you're thinking, Mr. Clooney.
I think that was acceptable. I think we talked about that at master plan where there's sidewalks only that are not buffered by any kind of landscape.
Okay.
I'm fine with that personally. I don't know, Rick, you want to jump in on that?
The only thing I'll add, and I'm not sure, my memory may not be that good. There may be, I realize the parking lot's tight, but for example, if you were to either widen the sidewalk such that if a vehicle backed up against the curb or put a grass strip, right, the concrete might be better, there would still be adequate ADA clearance on the sidewalk. So for example, if you've got a 4.5-foot sidewalk out there and you say, well, gee, if a car backs over this thing and takes up the first foot, maybe we should increase the width of the sidewalk to 5.5. Or put the wheel blocks. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
But whatever it is you decide to do, I'll leave it up to you guys to engineer it. You're in the business. I'm sure you don't want any mishaps, but it's just a point I wanted to draw out. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. I trust you'll look at it.
Excellent. Section 1440 was the intensity regulations. I believe that also was approved as part of master plan.
Yes.
Section 920B. This is the limiting heights of fences in the front yards to 4 feet, and to satisfy the request of DPW, we're showing a 6-foot fence along the frontage where the sidewalk is close to the pond. So that's what that waiver is. Section 106-6 is the fair share development fees. 106.4 is building permit fees. 122-2 soil erosion certification fee. There's also 122-2 the soil erosion inspection fee, and 122-2 the sewer assessment fees. The next page.
So before we go to the next page, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. I know we don't do too many of these. In the past, have we waived or made a recommendation to waive the fees only on the affordable units or for the entire development?
My recollection is only on the affordable units. I'm not sure on these fair share development fees. I don't know if that number has changed. I believe that the fair share development fees were lowered, but I'm not quite sure if the 7,500 is correct. But in the past, we have waived fees with only the affordable units. So that would be the 25% on the comp permit. You all set, Rick? You all set, Rick?
Sorry?
You want
I'm all set. I'm just throwing it out because some of the board members haven't been here before. And if it comes up and someone's making a motion that they want to have discussion, I just kind of wanted to get that out there. I mean, honestly, I didn't fully remember. I think it was you, Ron, that reminded the board the last 1 or 2 times that we usually only make a recommendation, or if it's our authority, waive fees.
Only on affordable.
On the 31 affordable units. And I believe you are correct. They readjusted the fair share development fee, and don't ask me how, but I believe it was lowered to just over 7,000, if not the high 6s.
I believe you're correct, and that's why I brought it up. So I think those numbers can be altered a little bit.
Yeah, it's moot anyway. It's whether or not we're going to waive the fee. So
right.
No, you
Okay. Sorry, Ben, you want to continue?
Mr. Chair, I got something to say on that.
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
We are correct with, we only waived the affordable in the past on I think I did 2 of these. So I guess what is pertinent to just the affordable? Would that be the fair share development fees and the sewer assessment fee, where you would tag that line to it for affordable only? Or is it for all the fees waived? Like, where would you tag that?
Well, I, in my opinion, any fees that need council approval, I would say would be a recommendation one way or the other to council. I still agree with Mr. D'Agostino that I don't believe this board has the power to waive sewer or fair share development fees. It can be done in a recommendation, but I think the council is going to make the final decision on that.
Okay.
I think you're correct, Mr. Anderson. The items that aren't tagged directly to a unit cost, we would just make the recommendation either to waive the fee, a portion of it, or all of it.
Okay, sorry, Ben, you want to continue?
Sure. Continuing on page 8 of 13, Article 13.b.15. That's the monuments waiver that we spoke of earlier. Again, the site is to a class 1 survey. The corners are marked. We're just requesting a waiver of the granite marker piece. It will be in accordance with the class 1 requirements. Article 14.f.2 is slopes and walls. So we talked about the wall height earlier. The slopes are tacked onto that in that the existing conditions of the site along those edges are already in excess of 3-to-1. So we're asking for a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1 slope with protection as shown on the plans. That would be like a riprap or some kind of a soil erosion protection to lock in that those steep slopes. Again, the extent of those areas will be finalized with the approval of a final wall design. Article 11.c.3.c is the preliminary application fees, and 11.c.3.d would be the final application fees. And then there's some additional fees listed on page 9 of 13. The DPW sewer connection application fee, DPW sewer connection inspection fee. We have recording fees, stenographer fees. There's a section on the real estate taxes. We're requesting a deferral of real estate tax until the certificate of occupancy is issued. And then, and I don't know if the board wants to approach this as a waiver or just a condition, but the Kent County water approval.
Yeah, that would be a condition, I believe, at the next stage. It would be a condition if we did approve the project. So I would say, yes, that would be a condition. Is that all your fees? You've basically gone through the list?
That's correct.
I mean, we gotta pay our employees, you know, they gotta pay some fees.
I was gonna ask, did you leave any out?
They didn't work for nothing. I mean, you know, I built a house not that long ago, and, you know, I'm not a for-profit business, and I didn't get any relief on any fees.
Mr. Chair, you made that point several times, and it makes more sense than much less for people. We are paying people to process this stuff.
But we are adding 31 affordable units to the town's tally in there, so.
I understand.
And adding benefits to the town in terms of taxes, as well as the jobs that are going to be coming into the town as well on 3 shifts.
And a beautiful, well thought out building, I have to say, that the project has come a long way in the amount of years. I've been on the board through this project from the infancy of it, and it's come a long way, I have to say. It's a beautiful plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But, you know, I'm not the town manager, and he's sitting in the meeting, and he's probably not feeling too good seeing all these waivers.
What was the annual tax benefit you expected?
It was a net of $651,000 plus or minus. It was more than that, a little bit more in terms of change. It was in the
basically just took the value of the building times the current assessment rate.
Yeah, what the fiscal impact statement and calculations that were done by Joe Lombardo and submitted back in June of 2019. I'm sure the taxes have gone up right now, but there were total gross revenue from the proposed residential development was $769,316. There was an offset of $117,810, leaving a net return to the town of $651,506 per year net.
Yeah. Okay.
That'll fill a lot of potholes.
And sure, we're going to need some after this last couple of weeks, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got all that COVID money to repair the streets. And boy, do they need them. I've been driving around myself. At this last storm we got, boy, did they take a beat.
Yeah, my dentist is probably going to get some business out of me for filling the fillings that have been knocked out going through a couple of those on Boston Neck Road down here.
Yeah. Yeah, the roads are really taking a beating. Okay, everybody's heard the list of waivers. Do we have any discussion on any of them? I think I put my 2 cents in.
I'd like the discussion I'd have is do what we've kind of done in the past and look at waiving fees on, or recommend waiving fees on the affordable units to give the developer some relief, but also maintain some input, some income into the town for the project as well, for the process.
I happen to agree with that. I mean, the fees on the affordable, it is bringing a relief to our 10%, and it is a good project for the town, and it is going to bring in some revenue for the town also. So you have to look at the project as a whole. Does anybody else have any comments about the waivers? Okay, anything on the, any engineering you saw tonight, the drainage? We talked about the walls, we talked about the fencing. Anybody else that might want to state anything about the project?
I just have one question at all. As
Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
as I was sitting here looking at the plan, I know that the engineers have thought it all out, and I hope it's not a concern. You have the drainage all planned out and thought out, and with these engineered walls coming in at the bottom of the walls, basically the whole footprint of this property is taken up by parking lot and building. And it is in a hole, in a gravel bank. Is flooding a concern at all?
Mr. Cato, you want to take over on that? Answer that?
Absolutely.
I think you had said it all goes to the retention area. It flows that way, correct?
That's correct. There's significant pitch throughout the paved areas to direct flow into catch basins. And if there's a catch basin that's blocked, like sometimes happens this year, like this time of year with snow, it's designed to move on to the next one. Everything gets collected in the pipes and goes to the basin, which is on the eastern part of the property. And that basin is sized to substantially lower the runoff from the site, and it's also infiltrating a large volume of water. So in my opinion, no, I don't expect flooding to be an issue here at all.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Anybody else have any comments? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Nope, I don't have anything.
You don't have any?
Nope.
Okay, I think, does the applicant have anything else to add?
Nothing other than thanking you for your time. I know it's been a long night. It was quite a contentious hearing on the previous one, and I'm happy that we didn't hear any opposition from anyone with regard to this. And I think it speaks to the project and its merits itself anyway that we didn't.
I happen to agree with you on that. I think the people realize the need, and that land is going to look so much better with this structure in its place, and I don't see where it's going to have any negative impact.
Also, that you guys did address any of the concerns that were raised last time. The public did address this, especially along the Tiffany Road area. You guys did a really good job at addressing those and with the buffer and the screening for those neighbors. So thank you for that.
On behalf of the designers, I thank you for that comment, and we accept it. I know that one of the concerns when the abutters look at any kind of a project of this magnitude, they're always worried that it's the beast is going to be worse than the design, and when it's in its finished product. But I know that all the plans, from the landscape to the engineering, has been very respectful of the surrounding abutters and the surrounding area, and it certainly is going to change the the entire look of the whole area in a very public artery in the town. One thing that I would like to do though is to ask and confirm that we be allowed to get administrative final plan approval in connection with this project. I think there are very few loose ends that are left out here. Kent County Water Authority, I'm sure we're going to sail through an approval with them very, very quickly. And anything else I think could be handled by staff. And I would ask that that be incorporated into the decision.
Yeah, that's something we do quite a bit. I wouldn't have any issue with that. We would just make, you know, in the finding of fact, anything that you happen to need that we don't have in front of us now would have to be done at final.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Are we ready for a motion, or we want to still, I think we discussed most of the waivers. I think we've been in agreement that we're going to do the waivers on the low to moderate income housing and the Affordable Act. But so Mr. D'Agostino, do we make a recommendation on the waivers for the affordable aspect that the town has jurisdiction of?
If that is what the board is inclined to do, I would make a recommendation, and staff can forward that recommendation along with your decision to the town council.
And we can put that in the findings of fact.
That is correct.
In the motion. Okay.
I just want to clarify. So, Mr. D'Agostino, it's your position that both the fair share development fees and the sewer assessment fees are not something this board can make a vote on. That is the town council's jurisdiction.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on this project.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll take another swipe at it.
Take a deep breath, Rick. Take your time.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to make a favorable approval of vote to approve the preliminary plans submitted for a major land development comprehensive permit application for New London Turnpike Realty LLC and Willow Lake Properties LLC. Property located on New London Turnpike, identified as Assessors Plat 16 Lot 3 in the R20 zone, consisting of approximately 12.38 acres of vacant land that was used as a former gravel bank. The proposed use is an independent living community with assisted living and memory care facilities with a total of 202 proposed units with 25% affordable independent units. The applicant and 25% affordable units comes out of 124 independent living units for a total of 31. The applicant proposes to construct a 3-story, 84,000 square foot building with a total of 202 units. The complex would include 124 independent living units, 48 assisted living units, and 30 memory care units. The proposed development is consistent with the local needs as identified in the local comprehensive community plan, with particular emphasis on the community's affordable housing plan, and/or has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. Coventry's affordable housing rate by the state's definition is currently around 5.4% compared with 8.3% in Rhode Island overall. The town of Coventry and the Coventry Housing Authority should continue to secure all available resources to provide housing for low-income groups, particularly senior citizens, the handicapped, disabled, disadvantaged families, including Section 8 certificates and vouchers, Section 8 substantial rehabilitation and moderate rehabilitation programs, Section 202 and Section 8 elderly housing program, Section 202, Section 8 handicapped housing program, and permanent housing for the handicapped program. The 2005 Affordable Housing Plan goals states, while Coventry does not have housing for the elderly, families, single persons, and special needs populations, there is a concern that new housing is focused mainly on single-family homes and is also out of the price range of most Coventry residents. The proposed development is in compliance with the standards and provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, or were expressly varied or waived, local concerns that have been affected by the relief herein granted do not outweigh the state and local need for low and moderate income housing. Considerations are the proposal will require 2 special use permits, which I'm going to incorporate into this approval for multifamily use and for physical therapy and other health-related services in an R20 zoning district. The proposed density of the dwelling units, 1 per 2,670 square feet, exceeds the standard baseline density for the R20 zone of 1 dwelling unit per 20,000, as well as the absolute maximum development density permitted under the zoning ordinance for the R20 zone for cluster multifamily developments. And the application is seeking waivers, which we'll get into in a second, of many of the fees applicable to the I'm just going to strike that, please. All low and moderate income housing units proposed are integrated throughout the development and are compatible in scale and architectural style to the market rate units within the project, and will be built or occupied prior to or simultaneous with the construction and occupancy of the market rate units. The applicant should identify these units that will be low, moderate income and ensure that they will be distributed throughout the independent living units. There does not appear to be any significant environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the plan presented with all required conditions for approval. There does not appear to be any significant impacts on the health and safety of current or future residents of the community in areas, including but not limited to the safe circulation of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, provisions for emergency services, sewage disposal, availability of potable water, surface water runoff, the preservation of natural, historical, cultural features that contributed to the attractiveness of the community. All the proposed land developments and subdivision. Okay, the proposed development will have access to a public street, and the proposed development will not result in the creation of any individual lots. Let's leave it at that. This approval is subject to the applicant obtaining approvals from Kent County Water Authority for the public water connection. If required, a approval from the Coventry Sewer Subcommittee. Together with this approval, the planning board grants a special use permit to build multifamily housing in an R20 zone in accordance with Article 6, Table 6.1, Line 5. Also a special use permit, zoning ordinance, Section 603.E, Table 6-1E 1.05. The applicant special use permit will allow for, or this special use permit will allow for physical therapy and other health-related services to be approved in this R20 zoning district. In addition, the following physical variances are to be granted. Lot coverage as defined in Section 603.A, Table 6-1, including 05, and Table 6-7, Section 1460, Section 1481. Waivers for wheel blocks, as we discussed at tonight's meeting, pertaining and identified in Section 1208. Waiver of the intensity regulations in Section 1440. Waiver of general development regulations in Section 920B. I hereby make a recommendation to the town council that they consider waiving the fair share development fees for the 31 affordable units, waiver for all building permit fees, a waiver of soil erosion certificate fees, a waiver of soil erosion inspection fees. The last three items being section 106-4, section 122-2, and section 122-2. And together with a recommendation to the town council to waive the sewer assessment fee for those 31 affordable or low to moderate income units. A physical waiver or physical relief waiver on the survey monuments. Sufficient boundary markers shall be adequate. A waiver of Article 14 F.2 for slopes and walls as discussed and based on what's shown on the plans, provided that the applicant will look at fencing where wall heights are excessive. And a waiver of the preliminary application fees and the final application fees for the 31 low to moderate affordable units. And a recommendation to waive the DPW sewer connection application and sewer connection inspection fees, which total about $300. A waiver on recording fees, a waiver on stenography fees, and real estate taxes shall be either deferred or abated until the project receives a certificate of occupancy. That the applicant be allowed to proceed administratively to final approval, and I would like to incorporate the planning director's report into my motion.
Great job, Rick. Would you also like to incorporate the engineer's report?
Are you talking about the 12 items?
Yeah, not sure if you just wanted to put the town's engineer's report in the motion.
I will, but I also want to note, they indicated all 12 items have been addressed, but I will incorporate it into my motion just to make sure that it's on the record, yes. And that would be the engineer's report dated April 21 of 2021, to a memorandum from Bruce Hageman to Russell Crossman.
Correct. Thank you, Rick. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Ms. Lukowitz. Any discussion?
The project's really, it's really nice. It's going to be a benefit to our community.
Sure is.
Yeah, I'm very proud of where this project started and ended. So I think I have complete confidence that this is going to be done really nice.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah, I think the board's going to be proud when this is done.
And Rick, good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any more discussion. I'll take a roll call. Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Ray.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Mr. Kinney.
Aye.
Mr. Mattson.
Aye.
Ms. Lukowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Clunian.
Aye.
Chairman Flynn says aye. Preliminary plan is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Appreciate it very much.
I appreciate all the hard work, and I certainly appreciate you listen to all the board's recommendation and the neighborhood's recommendations and the town's recommendations. It really pulled this project together. I know it took a long time, but I'm glad it's got to this point.
We had a very good team working on this. Kudos
Yes, you
to
did.
Cato and his outfit and landscape architect and all the people that were involved in this very careful planning. Thank you very much for the accolades. I know that they're appreciated by everyone who put their efforts into this project.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. May we be excused?
Yes, you can be.
Thank you very much.
Go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a public comment. We can't really, anybody that has any comments, I want them to understand we really can't address them, but we will take them into consideration. Cody, do we have anybody in the public that would like to speak?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, I guess there's no public hearing. Before we adjourn, I just have to state, I want to give kudos to our planning staff. They've been working vigorously. You really don't know how busy it is in there till you go down to that department. So I really just want to thank them for putting this together. And we're going to try to help them as much as we can with doing extra meetings. And I appreciate the board for doing that also. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Mattson, second by Mr. Reyes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a
Okay.
good night.
Good
Have a
night,
good
guys.
evening.
Good
Bye,
job.
Ben.
Nice job.